Chapter 869. When Ling Jing left Su Peijian's body, he felt that the gloom of this period of time had dissipated. He sat up quite refreshed. When he was about to leave, Su Peijian, who had been lying motionless on the bed, suddenly sat up. With a slap, he was slapped in the face. Su Peijian, with another slap, the other side of his face was also slapped. Ling Jing's face turned green, and he instinctively raised his hand. Su Peijian raised her head and looked at him fearlessly. Ling Jing put down his hand hatefully and pinched her chin. "Are you looking for death?" "Yes, I'm looking for death." "Do you want to kill me?" Su Peijian's breathing was a little unstable. She really wanted to know if Ling Jing would really kill her just because she was blind for a moment. "Do you think I don't dare?" "You dare, of course you dare. What else is there that you don't dare to do?" Su Peijian was furious. The shameless Ling Jing was simply hateful. Taking advantage of the innate gap between men and women, not only did he do whatever he wanted to her, but also, thinking of the entanglement between the two of them before, her face turned red. Not because she was shy, but because she was angry. She pushed Ling Jing away and got out of bed just like that. But this time, even her underwear was destroyed by him. There were no clothes in the room. She gritted her teeth, and her heart was almost bleeding. Walking to the wardrobe, she planned to pick 2 new clothes and leave at will. However, Ling Jing walked behind her and turned her body around. "Want to leave? Do you think I'll allow it?" "Ling Jing, have you had enough fun?" Su Peijian's eyes darkened, and there was obvious anger in them. "I have nothing to do with you now. Why don't you let me go?" "Enough?" "Of course not." Ling Jing pinched her chin and enjoyed the anger in her eyes. A beauty was a beauty. Even when she was angry, she had her own style. "Didn't I say it? You treat me, young Master Ling, as a toy boy. No matter what, you have to let me get back at you, right? Ling Jing, is it interesting for you to do this?" Su Peijian really hated that she didn't have a knife in her hand. Otherwise, she would have stabbed Ling Jing's body without hesitation. "Why not? I think it's very interesting." Ling Jing gently picked up her chin. "The previous account, plus these 2 slaps, do you think I want to get back 2 cities?" Su Peijian wasn't angered by Ling Jing. She calmed down immediately after a short moment of anger. If she was angry, it would be what he wanted. She wouldn't allow it. "What if I refuse?" "Don't tell me you want to lock me up like this." "There's no reason not to." Ling Jing spread out her hands indifferently. "Do you think you can leave if I don't let go?" "Ling Jing. This is illegal imprisonment. If you say so, then so be it. Do you want to call the police?" Ling Jing took out her phone and handed it to Su Peijian. "Make a call. Press 11 to 0. Let's see if the police can get you out." "Shameless. Ling Jing, how dare you?" "I said, you can try. See if I dare or not." Ling Jing chuckled and looked at the slight anger on Su Peijian's face. He only found it interesting. Very interesting. He really couldn't wait to know how Su Peijian planned to leave this place. Su Peijian didn't expect Ling Jing to do what he said. Her bag had been taken away by him a long time ago. There was no cell phone, no way to contact the outside world. Not only that, Ling Jing didn't even give her clothes to wear. She found a bathrobe in the bathroom and put it on. But she couldn't leave just like that. What's more, there were people guarding outside the room. If the people guarding didn't let her go, she couldn't leave at all. 3 days, a whole 3 days. No matter what Su Peijian did, she couldn't get the people guarding the door to let her go. If Ling Jing came back, the people guarding the door would leave. But with Ling Jing there, it was impossible for her to leave. 3 meals were sent to the room, and magazines and books were sent to her to read. The only thing was that she couldn't leave. On the 3rd day, Su Peijian felt that she was about to lose all her patience. She refused to eat. When she saw Ling Jing enter the door in a formal suit, she finally couldn't control her anger and rushed in front of Ling Jing. Ling Jing, what do you want? Didn't I say? I want to keep you. Are you keeping me? You're imprisoning me. Su Peijian raised her hand and was about to slap Ling Jing, but he grabbed her hand. She wanted to pull her hand back, but she couldn't. Ling Jing, are you going to let me go or not? Almost, it's the same thing. Ling Jing spread his hands. It's not impossible for me to let you go. But will you come back here obediently? In your dreams. Su Peijian didn't expect Ling Jing to be so shameless. She thought that he should have had enough fun with the previous farce. If that's the case, then there's nothing to talk about. Ling Jing raised his eyebrows rather shamelessly, looking as if he couldn't do anything to her. Su Peijian nodded angrily. Okay. I promise you. Can you let me go now? No. Ling Jing seemed to know what she was thinking. If you want to leave, you can. Sign a contract with me first. As long as you sign it, I promise to let you go immediately. What contract? What contract? Of course it's a keeping agreement. You won't forget what you did to me back then, right? Su Peijian clenched her fists. She finally understood that Ling Jing would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. He would do what she had done to him before. Okay. Sign a contract, right? Give it to me. I'll sign it. When Su Peijian finished this sentence, she felt as if something was pressing on her heart. But I have to have a deadline, right? After all, when I kept you, I didn't say that I would keep you for a lifetime. Half a year. Ling Jing smiled. Just half a year. I told you, I'm just doing what you've done to me to you. Half a year? Su Peijian felt her heart tighten. Finally, she suddenly smiled. Okay, half a year it is. Having a deadline was better than not having a deadline. She agreed, and Ling Jing was satisfied. She clapped her hands and called Gu Xiu to prepare the contract. Su Peijian watched Gu Xiu come and go, then looked at the bathrobe on her body. Now, can you return my clothes and bag to me? Of course. Ling Jing nodded. But forget about the clothes. That day, you vomited all over me. It was an eyesore, so I threw that set of clothes away. He gave an order, and soon someone brought the clothes. They were hung on the rack. From the inside to the outside, everything was available. They were all the latest models of several big brands. Su Peijian took a deep breath and put on a random set of clothes, not caring whether Ling Jing was beside her or not. If she wanted to see it, she would have seen it all long ago. There was no need to be reserved at this time. Ling Jing liked Su Peijian's magnanimity. However, when he thought of the photos he had received before, his face darkened. He didn't know how many men she had slept with to train her magnanimity. He suddenly gritted his teeth and buckled Su Peijian, who had already put on the clothes, into his arms without thinking. He lowered his head and gave her a very simple and rough kiss. Su Peijian didn't know why he suddenly went crazy and couldn't help but struggle. Ling Jing still wanted to pull her clothes. Su Peijian didn't expect him to be like this. He could go into heat almost any time and anywhere. For a moment, she was extremely angry. She had clearly agreed to sign the contract, but she still didn't want to be treated like a prostitute by Ling Jing. She raised her foot and was about to kick Ling Jing's crotch. Someone knocked on the door of the room, and Ling Jing stopped for a moment. He heard Gu Xiu's head at the door of the room behind him lowered so tightly that it was almost buried in his chest. Young master. What's the matter? There's a guest. Guest? What guest? I don't want to see him. The guest has come in and said he wants to see you. Are Ah Ming and his people doing nothing? Stop him. No, this guest has a special identity. I don't dare to stop him. Gu Xiu's words made Ling Jing look in his direction. Gu Xiu looked at him, and then looked at Su Peijian. Ling Jing roughly understood. He slightly frowned, let go of Su Peijian, and walked downstairs. Downstairs, Su Qingsang came to the door with at least 20 police officers. She walked in front of the police officers with a cold expression. When Ling Jing went downstairs, he saw Su Qingsang standing in front of the 20 police officers at a glance. He slightly narrowed his eyes. Instead of pretending not to know Su Qingsang, he took a few steps forward. "Mrs. Hua, what are you doing?" Su Qingsang glanced at Ling Jing coldly. She had an impression of this Ling Jing. She had seen him once in the hospital. Later, when she heard that Su Peijian had broken up with her boyfriend, she thought it was just an ordinary man. Unexpectedly, it was the young master of the Ling family. "Young Master Ling, you're too polite. I heard that my sister is here. I'm here to take her away today." He used the word heard, but his attitude was extremely firm. They both knew that Su Qingsang had done her homework. "Your sister?" Ling Jing raised his eyebrows. "But, your sister stayed here voluntarily." "Mrs. Hua, it doesn't seem appropriate for you to make such a big scene, does it?" "Whether it's appropriate or not, I don't care for the time being. As long as young Master Ling hands over my sister, I won't disturb you. You can take them away immediately." "Mrs. Hua's words are interesting. I've already said that your sister stayed willingly. How did it become that I forced her to stay? Whether it is or not, won't you know when my sister comes down?" Ling Jing's expression was a little ugly. The Ling family was powerful, but they really didn't want to have a conflict with the people of the legal world. Su Qingsang had come with such a big scene. He had already discussed it with Su Peijian. Wouldn't this change again? What? Does young Master Ling want someone to go up and search? "Mrs. Hua, even if you are the wife of the CEO of Tianyu Group, I don't think you have the right to search my house, do you?" "I don't have the right." Su Peijian took a step to the side. "But, they do." As soon as she stepped back, the policeman standing next to her took out a search warrant. Su Qingsang stood there with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. "My sister has been missing for more than 24 hours. Since I suspect that she is here, I will naturally do my homework. So, please let her go." Young Master Ling Jing's expression was very ugly. Gu Xiu next to him looked at him. Although they were not afraid of the police, it was very unwise to have a conflict with these people like this. If the ancient cultivators could figure it out, then Ling Jing could naturally figure it out as well. He turned to look at Gu Xiu. Gu Xiu understood and went upstairs to call Su Peijian. Su Peijian was originally waiting for Ling Jing to bring the contract so that she could sign it and leave. For her, it was only half a year. What was the point? She would spend half a year with Ling Jing. Half a year would let her see Ling Jing clearly and completely give up on him. When the time was up, she could return to the proud and free Su Peijian. However, she didn't see Ling Jing come upstairs, but Gu Xiu came. She had seen this person many times in the past few days. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was Ling Jing's right-hand man. "Miss Su, please go downstairs." Gu Xiu looked at Su Peijian. He really didn't expect that his young master would make such a big scene when he was in a relationship. "Go downstairs?" Su Peijian thought about it and agreed. After going downstairs to sign the contract, she could leave. At the thought of signing a contract with Ling Jing for half a year, she felt extremely ironic. Speaking of which, she used to be the eldest daughter of the Su family. In the future, she would be reduced to a mistress who could not see the light of day. What was this? Retribution? However, Su Peijian didn't expect that when she went downstairs, she would see a group of police officers and Su Qingsang. "You." Her lips moved, and she wanted to say something. Su Qingsang gave her a look, walked in front of her, and squeezed her hand. "Mom was very worried about you. It's good that you're fine." Without saying anything else, Su Qingsang brought her to her side. "You go with these police officers first. I still have a few words to say to Mr. Ling." Su Qingsang's appearance surprised Su Peijian. She didn't expect Su Qingsang to come. She wanted to say something, but when she received Su Qingsang's gaze, she left with the police without looking back. Ling Jing had been staring at Su Peijian's face. He didn't expect that woman to be so heartless. She was so heartless that she didn't even look at him. There seemed to be a fire burning in his heart, burning so much that he wanted to kill again. However, before the fire burned, Su Qingsang had already walked in front of him. The police had already taken Su Peijian out. Su Qingsang had no scruples. She raised her hand and slapped Ling Jing's face. Ling Jing froze for a moment and immediately glared at Su Qingsang. "You, young Master Ling, right?" Su Qingsang looked at Ling Jing, not afraid of his cold eyes at all. "I have other things to do today, but I want to say something to young Master Ling. The girls of our Su family can't be bullied by anyone." "Mrs. Hua, what do you mean?" "Nothing." Su Qingsang retracted her hand and gently patted it. "The internal conflicts of our family are our own private affairs, but young Master Ling bullied our children like this. Isn't he looking down on our Su family?" She stared at Ling Jing, her eyes full of coldness. "That's right. Our Su family may not have any power in Rong City, and our main development is in Lin City. But the children of our Su family can't be bullied by anyone. Young Master Ling, we'll see." "Mrs. Hua, are you trying to use your power to oppress people?" "I don't dare." Su Qingsang smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I don't have power. Although I'm not talented, my husband has some ability. Your Ling family is powerful. But our Hua family is not afraid of trouble. Mrs. Hua, do you want the Hua family to go against the Ling family? Whether it's right or wrong depends on young Master Ling. I'm a medical student, and I like to be direct. I just have one thing to say. Next time, please stay away from our Peijian, young Master Ling. She's not someone you can touch." Ling Jing gritted her teeth and nodded. "What if I insist?" "Then you can try, young Master Ling. What will the result be if you go against the Hua family and the Su family? Young Master Ling, please believe me. Based on my husband's feelings for me, I can still do such a small thing." She had always been low-key and didn't like to bully others. But the feeling of bullying others occasionally wasn't bad. Ling Jing's expression was very ugly. Su Qingsang didn't want to pay attention to him at all. She turned around and left. As soon as she went out, Ling Jing got angry and swept all the things on the coffee table to the ground. Gu Xiao and a dozen subordinates standing beside him didn't even dare to breathe. Su Qingsang didn't care how crazy Ling Jing was. She went out, and Su Peijian sat in her car. She didn't care about her and thanked the police first. If it weren't for the Hua family and the Ling family's power, she wouldn't have wanted to trouble these people. However, the Hua family usually had a good relationship with these people. Although those people were ordered by the higher-ups to run errands, there was really no big problem. Such a task was really simple. After the pleasantries, Su Qingsang sent the police away and got into the car. Looking at Su Peijian, she took a thermos cup from the front of the car. "Drink some flower tea." Su Peijian glanced at her and took the cup from her hand. It was still afternoon. She looked at the dazzling sunlight outside and then at Su Qingsang. "How did you know I was here? You didn't contact your family for 3 days. Aunt Xiang was worried that something had happened to you. She wanted to go to the police, but she was afraid that there would be a misunderstanding, so she begged me. I asked Hua Jinyao's people to check, asked your company's secretary, and checked the surveillance cameras of the club that day. But the surveillance cameras were broken, and we couldn't see what happened 3 days ago. So I could only speculate from the owner of the club. Later, after checking several surveillance cameras outside, I found out that it was Ling Jing who took you away." Su Peijian's expression was a little bad. She held the thermos cup tightly, and when the flower tea went down her throat, she felt much better. "Let's go, I'll take you home." "Okay." Su Peijian didn't know what to say. She never thought that one day she would have to trouble Su Qingsang to save her. Su Qingsang started the car and heard Su Peijian speak very softly beside her. Actually, I already made him promise to let me go just now. Are you saying that I'm nosy? Su Qingsang just focused on driving, and her expression didn't look slow at all. Thank you. Su Peijian didn't mean that. Su Qingsang glanced at her. Back where? To Aunt Xiang's place? Yes. Su Qingsang focused on driving and stopped talking. She sent Su Peijian to the door. Watching her get out of the car, she remembered. Don't feel burdened. Mom asked me to take care of you. After all, I'm your sister now. Su Peijian looked at her. Su Qingsang smiled, turned around, started the car, and left. Su Peijian was left looking at the shadow of the car in the distance, and her expression was a little strange. Sister? It seemed like the feeling of having a sister wasn't too bad. Su Peijian's gloomy mood for the past few days was swept away. As for Ling Jing, she wouldn't give him another chance, and she believed that he wouldn't come again. Chapter 870. Su Peijian didn't know what Su Qingsang said to Ling Jing that day. After that day, she never saw Ling Jing again. She comforted Xiang Kaiping and told her that she just went to stay with a friend for a few days and forgot to contact her. Although Xiang Kaiping didn't believe her, she was happy that she could come back safely. Xiang Kaiping didn't ask much of her. As long as she came home often and was safe, everything else was fine. However, she was still worried about her. Su Peijian's new duplex had just been renovated. Xiang Kaiping thought about it and decided to move to the duplex with Su Peijian. In fact, she also thought that the villa was too big for her to live alone. However, she had made some money and had nowhere to spend it, so she bought a villa. There were a lot of things to prepare for moving. Xiang Kaiping was busy, and she was in a much better state of mind. Su Peijian watched her busy and started to get busy herself. She felt a little sorry for Lin Feixing. She specially asked him out to apologize to him. After all, if it weren't for her, he wouldn't have been bullied by Ling Jing. However, she didn't expect that Lin Feixing didn't seem to know why he was bullied that day. He didn't wait for her to find him. He came to her first. I'm sorry. Lin Feixing apologized to Su Peijian as soon as he saw her. Su Peijian was confused by this. I had dinner with you that day, but I got into a conflict with someone and was locked up for a few days. Lin Feixing also felt that he was really unlucky. I don't know who the other party is. They locked me up for a few days before letting me go. I wanted to call the police, but I didn't even know who the other party was. He scratched his head. It was the first time for Lin Feixing to be so embarrassed in front of the woman he liked. I'm really sorry. Have you been worried sick these past few days? Su Peijian couldn't say anything. She wanted to apologize. She could only smile faintly and finally twitch the corner of her mouth. It's okay. I'm just a little worried about you. I'm sorry. Lin Feixing smiled and brought up another matter. We didn't have dinner last time. To apologize, let's make an appointment again and let me make it up to you. How about that? No need. Su Peijian couldn't say that he got into trouble because of her. I should be the one treating you. I'm just trying to calm you down. Sure. Lin Feixing smiled. That's cheaper for me. Lin Feixing was just like that. You would never feel uncomfortable when you were around him. Su Peijian smiled. She set a time with him and went back to work. She took 2 calls from Hui Yifan, but she ignored them and hung up. In the end, Hui Yifan stopped calling. This time, Su Peijian purposely picked a revolving restaurant on the top floor of a 5-star hotel to treat Lin Feixing to dinner. She had asked around. This was the property of Hui Jinyao, Tang Mohan's family. It had nothing to do with Ling Jing. She believed that Ling Jing would not disturb her again, but she had to take precautions. In the future, she would avoid Ling Jing's family's business if she could. The hotel was on the top floor, overlooking most of Rome City. Su Peijian arrived early. When she arrived, a waiter came over and led her to the seat she had reserved in advance. Her seat was next to the display window. She glanced out of the window. As night fell, the neon lights began to shine. While he was enjoying the beautiful scenery, Lin Feixing arrived. He was dressed very formally today. He was wearing a white suit, which made him look clean and neat. He looked a little like a Prince Charming. She couldn't help but think of another man who was also wearing a white suit. That image made her expression change slightly for a moment. She retracted her gaze and took the initiative to stand up. "I'm late." Lin Feixing was a little apologetic. "Did you wait long?" "No, I just arrived." "Have a seat." After ordering, Lin Feixing looked at Su Peijian. "Peijian?" "Yes?" "I actually wanted to ask, did you break up with that person?" He didn't say who, but Su Peijian immediately understood what he meant. She looked down and thought of the scene where Ling Jing arrogantly said that he wanted to provide for her. Suddenly, she smiled. She looked up at Lin Feixing with a calm and natural gaze. "You want to ask if I broke up? Am I single now?" Lin Feixing was relieved. He had a lot of women chasing after him outside. But he didn't know why he liked Su Peijian. Su Peijian's attitude made him relax a little. "Yes, I want to ask you, if I'm single now, I might be able to pursue you again." Su Peijian was silent for a while and looked up at Lin Feixing. "I'm sorry to disappoint you." "It's okay." Lin Feixing didn't seem surprised at all. "I was rude. I'm single, but I don't plan to start a new relationship for the time being." The incident with Ling Jing had hurt her. She probably wouldn't have the strength to love anyone in a short period of time. She needed time to forget Ling Jing and to let go. "Understood." Lin Feixing looked at the gloomy expression on her face and said very carefully, "Then, can I queue up first? That way, I can fight for a chance for myself." "You don't have to." Su Peijian shook her head. "It's not fair to use you to forget another man." "What if I don't mind?" "I mind." She didn't like to owe people. She had always been proud, so naturally, she wouldn't allow herself to do such a thing. "Then I have no hope at all, right?" Lin Feixing joked. He didn't look like he took it to heart, but in fact, he was still a little disappointed. "I can only promise you that if there's a chance, I'll definitely let you jump the queue first." "How about that?" Lin Feixing smiled and raised the glass in front of him. "In that case, I'll reserve it." She really didn't feel any burden to be with someone like Lin Feixing. Su Peijian looked at him and thought more than once that if she fell in love with Lin Feixing, she would probably be much happier. However, in this world, there were no ifs. After this date, she and Lin Feixing were back to being friends. Su Qinghui's company was still working with Lin Feixing's company. As Su Qinghui's representative, she couldn't avoid meeting Lin Feixing. The few times they met after that were all in the company. However, after the final execution of a case and the lawsuit, Lin Feixing proposed to treat her and the people from his company to dinner, and she agreed. After all, she wasn't alone. However, this company referred to the team that Su Qinghui left in Rome City. They were the core members. There weren't many people, only a dozen or so. Lin Feixing booked a large private room in the hotel and asked Su Peijian to bring them there when the time came. Su Peijian agreed and brought the group of people to the place Lin Feixing mentioned. They all arrived, but Lin Feixing didn't. He was stuck in a traffic jam and was quite far away, so he arrived a little late. Su Peijian's phone just happened to ring. She got up and went outside to answer the call. Coincidentally, she bumped into Lin Feixing, who was rushing over. She walked very fast and bumped into Lin Feixing's arms. "Sorry." She moved away from Lin Feixing's arms and smiled at him awkwardly. She gestured for Lin Feixing to enter the private room first. "Aren't you going in?" "No, I have to take a call first. Su Peijian's phone was still ringing. Lin Feixing nodded and entered the private room. After he left, Su Peijian was about to answer the call when she saw Hui Yifan walking toward her. Seeing him, Su Peijian took her phone and walked to the other side of the corridor without thinking. Little did she know that Hui Yifan would quickly follow her. Hui Yifan blocked Su Peijian at the end of the corridor. His action made Su Peijian hang up the phone. She crossed her arms and looked at Hui Yifan coldly. What's the matter? Why can't I call you only if I have something to say? Can't we be old lovers catching up? I have nothing to talk about with you. Su Peijian looked at him coldly. Please get out of my way. You're quite capable. Hui Yifan thought about the scene he just saw of Su Peijian hugging another man. You dumped one after another. I don't know what you're talking about. Su Peijian felt very speechless that she actually thought of cooperating with Hui Yifan. If she had known that Hui Yifan was such a sore loser, she would never have cooperated with such a person. You don't know what I'm talking about? What about that Ling Jing from before? Didn't you guys live together? Why aren't you together anymore? Su Peijian suddenly narrowed her eyes and stared at Hui Yifan. What Ling Jing? What do you know? I know a lot. Hui Yifan smiled. Not only do I know that Ling Jing is the young master of the Ling family, but I also know that he dumped you, don't I? Hui Yifan. She didn't even know that Ling Jing was the young master of the Ling family. How did Hui Yifan know? I was wondering why you didn't get back together with me. It turns out that you hooked up with the young master of the Ling family. But what a pity. So what if you hooked up with him? Didn't he still dump you? Does it have anything to do with you? Or does young Master Hu think that I'm going to jump into your arms because I've been dumped? Of course it has something to do with me. Although I know that you can't jump into my arms, I can't let you be too proud, can I? Su Peijian could hear something wrong from Hui Yifan's words. What did you do? What did I do? Hui Yifan smiled. Actually, I didn't do anything. I just changed some of the photos we took together in the past and photoshopped a few photos to send to Ling Jing. Seeing Su Peijian's slightly changed expression, the smile on his face became more and more proud. I thought you had a good eye. You could find a good man after you kicked me, but what happened in the end? It was just a few photoshopped photos, just a few provocative words, just 2 videos, and he dumped you. I think that young Master Ling is nothing more than this. Su Peijian was very smart. Hui Yifan's words immediately reminded her of the scene when Ling Jing and his mother appeared in her apartment that day. At that time, when Ling Jing saw her, his first reaction was obviously guilt, embarrassment, and confusion, but then his expression changed. She was too sad at that time and didn't notice the change in Ling Jing's attitude. Chapter 871. Thinking of Ling Jing that day, a trace of heartache welled up in her heart again. She suppressed the trace of pain. She knew that as time passed, she would become more and more accustomed to that kind of pain, and it would become fainter and fainter. She couldn't say how she felt, but Su Peijian was naturally not afraid of Hui Yifan. Her voice was very vicious as she sneered. Young Master Ling is nothing, and you, young Master Hua, are even less so. Yes, Ling Jing is a bastard. He has no brains and casually believed a few photoshopped photos. But who do you think you are, Hui Yifan? Hui Yifan's frozen face, she smiled lightly. What's the difference between you and Ling Jing? There's no difference. If you can't have it, you will destroy it. You can even do something like having sex. If old Master Hun knew that his grandson still did such things after being released from prison, I'm afraid he would want to send you back to prison, right? I what? Am I wrong? Su Peijian raised her eyebrows, and her beautiful eyes were full of coldness. The Hua family's upbringing is for you to threaten a woman? Is it for you to photoshop a woman's sex? The Hua family is really good at upbringing. Su Peijian, do you want to die? Hui Yifan was furious and raised his hand to grab Su Peijian. She took a step back. Hui Yifan, if I were you, I would never do it. Maybe you should go and find out what Su Qingsang did a few days ago. She's my sister. You know that she's not only the young mistress of the Hua family, but also the wife of the CEO of Tianyu Group. By the way, she also gave birth to a pair of very cute twins for the Hua family. Old Master Hua treats her like his own granddaughter. Are you sure you want to offend her for me? Who didn't know how to bully others? She used to be good at it. Now that he was using Su Qingsang's identity, he believed that she wouldn't mind. Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes, his hand hanging in the air without moving. Hui Yifan, for the sake of our acquaintance, let me give you a piece of advice. If I were you, I would tuck my tail between my legs and keep a low profile. Perhaps your old man will take pity on you, and you might even get some other opportunities. As for me, you don't have to provoke me. After all, even if I'm not the daughter of the Li family, as long as I'm Su Qingsang's sister, you can't touch me. Unless you really want to go back to prison. You know that Hu Jinmiao has that ability. Hui Yifan's expression was very ugly. Su Peijian looked at him coldly. She was not in the mood to stay any longer, nor was she in the mood to make another call. He turned around and went back to the private room without looking back. Damn it. After her figure disappeared, Hui Yifan kicked the wall angrily. *tch, you better pray that you don't fall into my hands in this lifetime. Otherwise, I'll make you wish you were dead. Just as he finished speaking, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The newcomer was tall and somewhat thin. A dangerous glint flickered in her beautiful almond-shaped eyes. Hui Yifan suddenly froze. You are, a heavy and fast punch landed on his face. His body was knocked to the side. He thought that this was the end, but unexpectedly, the other party's fist came even more fiercely. Hui Yifan was no match for him at all. Ling Jing's life had been a bit rough recently. First of all, he was scolded by his own father. The reason was that Hu Jinmiao had people secretly and openly suppressed the Ling family's business. The Ling family had power, so did the Hua family. Not to mention that the Hua family had power in both the military and the underworld. Hu Jinmiao didn't need to do much. He just made a few reports and let people say that the Ling family's businesses were dirty. That was enough. After that, the police would go to the Ling family's businesses from time to conduct temporary inspections. Although they couldn't find anything, it more or less affected the business. This made the old man very angry. He called him back to the old house and scolded him, asking him why he had to provoke the Hua family. He let the matter go. It wasn't difficult to solve. After all, the Ling family still had the Ling family's power. Those people didn't dare to go too far even if they caused a few trouble. However, there was another matter that made him feel unhappy. Something happened to the Ling family, he naturally had to step in and solve it. After it was solved, the Hua family finally quieted down. When he was free, he found something that made him very depressed. It had been nearly 6 months since Su Peijian stepped out of his villa. More than 6 months, it took less than a month to solve the Ling family's problem. When everything calmed down and he wanted to resume his life as the young master of the Ling family, he realized that he couldn't arouse any interest in the women sent by others. It didn't matter if they were pretty and adorable, or youthful and bright, or if they were charming, or if they were flirtatious. At first, he didn't think there was a problem, but after looking at them again, he found them boring. They were very boring. There was always a lack of taste in their eyes, and their manners were lacking elegance. If it was a lady from a wealthy family, he would feel a little bored. He didn't like the dignified ones, and he thought that the slutty ones were too slutty. He thought that the passionate ones were too proactive, and the cold ones were too pretentious. In 6 months, he had changed more than 20 women. However, none of them could arouse his interest. This made him very unhappy, and this kind of unhappiness had accumulated to the peak today. Today, he had an appointment with a foreign partner company to discuss the route cooperation. Not only did the company's president come, but he also brought a glamorous and exotic girl. The girl seemed to be interested in him. As soon as she came in, she not only winked at him, but also took the opportunity to put her hand on his leg. The meaning of flirting was very obvious. She had blonde hair, blue eyes, clear facial features, and was so enthusiastic and proactive. If it were in the past, he would have done it without any problem. However, today, he actually felt tired. The other party's enthusiasm made him tired, the smell of the other party's perfume made him tired, and the other party's actions made him even more tired. He used the excuse of making a phone call to let Gu Xiu deal with the group of people, and he came out to get some fresh air. He asked someone to bring a pack of cigarettes over, and he stood in the bathroom at the end of the corridor to smoke. He was wondering what was wrong with him. Should he go for a physical examination? There was no need. He knew his own body very well, and his reaction every morning was normal. But why couldn't he get excited about those women? He thought that maybe those women were too inferior. They couldn't arouse his interest. Puffing out smoke rings, he felt bored. He was about to throw the cigarette back into the private room when he heard the sound of arguing in the corner of the corridor outside. Coincidentally, that female voice sounded very familiar to him. Su Peijian, thinking of this woman, Ling Jing still had a toothache. That day, Su Qingsang slapped him in the face and warned him to stay away from Su Peijian. What was rare was that she was just a prisoner. She was just playing around. Who would take it seriously? Did they really think that he, young Master Ling, couldn't have Su Peijian? What a joke. Thinking this, Ling Jing unconsciously clenched his fists. That damned woman, she dumped him one moment, and then she was here with another man the next. She couldn't even get herself involved. It was simply despicable. Before he could go out to see what kind of man Su Peijian had her eyes on, Su Peijian's next conversation with that man made his body unable to move. Does it have anything to do with you? Or do you, young Master Hua, think that I'm going to jump into your arms because I've been dumped? Of course it has something to do with me. Although I know that you can't jump into my arms, I can't let you be too proud, can I? What did you do? What did I do? Actually, I didn't do anything. I just changed the photos we took together in the past, photoshopped a few photos, and sent them to Ling Jing. I thought that you had good taste. You could find a good man after you kicked me, but what happened in the end? It was just a few photoshopped photos, just a few provocative words, just 2 videos, and he dumped you. I think that young Master Ling is nothing more than this. Photoshopped. Ling Jing's temples throbbed. The cigarette had burned to the end, but he didn't notice it at all. He still remembered how he felt when he saw those photos and videos. Anger, resentment, rage, and the urge to destroy and kill. But those photos were photoshopped. He, Ling Jing, actually fell for such a trick. Such a simple and crude provocation without any technical content had succeeded in making him believe it. Not only did he believe it, but he really, Ling Jing didn't have time to react, and Su Peijian's next words were like another slap on his face. Yes, Ling Jing is a bastard. He has no brains. He casually believed a few photoshopped photos. Damn that woman, who gave her the right to say that about him? Who? However, the cigarette had burned to his fingertips, but Ling Jing didn't feel it. He just had an impulse to go out and take a look at Su Peijian. He wanted to rush out and explain to that woman, to ask her why she said that he had no brains. But thinking of his previous actions, Ling Jing's footsteps were frozen, and he couldn't move a step. Su Peijian said that he dumped her. Yes, she was the woman he dumped. But, Ling Jing, let's be together. Go and learn, and when you're done, you'll be able to learn. After you finish your studies, I will invest in a pastry bakery. I will let you be your own boss. I don't despise you. Ling Jing, people don't need to care about other people's opinions when they are alive. But this world has its own rules, and we can only work hard to live according to our own hearts. Ling Jing, I like you. Ling Jing. I want to give you a gift to celebrate your first day at work. Ling Jing. The cigarette at his fingertips fell to the ground, but Ling Jing didn't notice it at all. Many scenes from when the two of them lived together flashed through his mind. Su Peijian said a lot of things, and every expression she made when they were together. She wasn't a very patient person. She couldn't even be called a good woman in the traditional sense. But she really tolerated and liked him. Even if he was just a pretty boy at that time. But he knew that Su Peijian's feelings for him were real. She used to plan his future very seriously. She used to think about the possibility of the two of them being together. She really liked him. Su Peijian. She really liked him. The kind that she liked very much. When she realized this, Ling Jing felt a sharp pain in her heart. If those photos were fake, then how hurtful would the words he said that day and the things he did later be? After he said those hurtful words that day, how sad would Su Peijian be? Didn't young Master Ling say that I'm a prisoner? Young Master Ling, don't you think it's beneath your status to keep a prisoner like me? That day, when Su Peijian mentioned the word prisoner, although her expression was sarcastic, there was a flash of pain in her eyes. At that time, he only felt carefree because he finally made Su Peijian beg him. But now, he only wanted to strangle himself. Yes. As the dignified young master of the Ling family, I, Su Peijian, wronged you to be my pretty boy. Speaking of which, it was indeed my fault. I just don't know how young Master Ling plans to teach me a lesson. Some things couldn't be thought about. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. The more he thought about it, the clearer it became. The Ling Jing who always felt that he was unhappy in his heart. The Ling Jing who always felt that he was obsessed with Su Peijian because she was unwilling to be treated as a pretty boy by him. The Ling Jing who always thought that he was just giving her a taste of her own medicine and just wanted to teach Su Peijian a lesson. At this time, he was finally willing to face his own heart. It wasn't like that. It never was. It was really unhappy, unwilling, and he couldn't take it lying down. He had 10,000 ways to teach Su Peijian a lesson. Why did he insist on making her fall in love with him? Why did he always want to be entangled with her? Because she was her, the one and only Su Peijian. The Su Peijian who was especially attractive, especially charming, and especially different. And the woman he loved. Yes, Ling Jing was finally willing to admit it at this time. He fell in love with Su Peijian. He fell in love with the arrogant, delicate, indifferent, yet passionate, selfish, yet kind Su Peijian who had her own bottom line. Because he fell in love with Su Peijian, so the women after that could no longer enter his eyes. Because he fell in love with Su Peijian, so he had no interest in those women. Because he fell in love with Su Peijian, so he was so angry when he saw those photos. He didn't even distinguish whether they were real or fake. He was just jealous, so jealous that he wanted to kill. And because he fell in love with Su Peijian, even if he knew that she had more than one man, even if he knew that Su Peijian didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore, he still stubbornly wanted to create opportunities to give himself a chance with her. Because he loved her, the subconscious in his heart knew it clearly. So he tried his best to stay by that woman's side, or let her stay by his side. The impulse in his heart was more honest than he thought. But he didn't know that he had never loved anyone, never. His frivolity and cynicism had become a habit. He liked to control everything in his hands, whether it was things or people. But Su Peijian was never something he could control. She wasn't an ordinary woman. He didn't know this, he didn't understand. He didn't understand what his self-righteous decisions and actions had made him lose. Chapter 872. His emotions were constantly tumbling, and his thoughts were chaotic and tangled. It was only a matter of a few minutes. The dispute outside ended, and the footsteps faded away, but he heard Hui Yifan's voice. At that moment, he finally lost control. Without thinking, he rushed out and waved his fist at Hui Yifan. Su Peijian was his woman. If he wanted to do something to her, he had to ask for his permission first. What's more, this damn man. If it weren't for him, how could he have misunderstood? If he hadn't misunderstood, how could things have developed to the point where they were out of control? One punch after another, he hit very hard. A fire was ignited in his heart again, and this fire was even stronger than the previous one, making him want to kill more. The urge to destroy everything was so obvious. He could only drag Hui Yifan in front of him and constantly vent his inner anger. Until Gu Xiu appeared, until the representative of the other party's partner company also came, he finally stopped and looked coldly at Hui Yifan, who had been beaten black and blue by him. If you dare to touch a finger of her, I will definitely let you die with her. You can try. Let me see if I can do it. After saying this, he didn't even have the mood to talk about cooperation with the other party's company. He went to Su Peijian's private room. He wanted to find her. He must find her, he must tell her, perhaps his aura was too amazing, and his eyes were too scary. The representative sent by the partner was frightened by him. The beauty with hair and blue eyes who had just wanted to hook up with him began to retreat, for fear of provoking Ling Jing. Ling Jing didn't care what they did. Although this hotel wasn't his, it was easy to ask which private room Su Peijian was in. Su Peijian, when Ling Jing's footsteps reached the door of the private room, he suddenly stopped. After a reincarnation, Rome City once again entered December. He didn't know where the cold wind blew from the corridor, but it made him feel a lot more awake. He leaned against the wall, and his mind was in a mess. Go to Su Peijian now? Say what? How to say? Ling Jing just stood outside the private room for a long time and couldn't move. The hand on the wall was still exerting force at first, but then it slowly loosened and finally drooped down weakly. What should he do? Su Peijian had no idea what was going on outside. She was happily chatting with her colleagues in the private room. Su Chenghui naturally had a good eye for people. Although he wasn't in Rome City often, the people he hired were truly capable and capable. The meal was enjoyable. After the meal, she didn't reject Lin Feixing's offer to send her home. In fact, they were all drunk and couldn't drive, so they found a designated driver. Lin Feixing got into the car and asked Su Peijian where she was going. Su Peijian told him the address of her new house. She had moved to a duplex with Xiang Kaiping. The house was bigger than Rome Garden, but smaller than the villa. It was very convenient to go out. The main thing was that she had been coming home every day recently. Xiang Kaiping was finally very satisfied. Although Xiang Kaiping knew that Xiang Kaiping had been drinking, she could understand this kind of social interaction. Are you okay? I saw you drink quite a lot just now. No. Su Peijian smiled and shook her head. I know. Don't worry. I'm not drunk. Lin Feixing looked at her pretty face in the night. I'd rather you were drunk. Su Peijian didn't respond to him. Instead, she turned her head and looked out of the car window. Lin Feixing couldn't hide his disappointment, but Su Peijian didn't notice. The car stopped at Su Peijian's apartment and she got out. Lin Feixing followed her out and asked the driver to wait for him. He walked her to the door. Let's stop here. I'll go up myself. Thank you for today. If you really want to thank me, why don't you invite me up? It's okay. My mom is at home. I know Aunt Xiang too. I don't think she will mind. Su Peijian turned to look at him. She looked very serious. I mind. Lin Feixing didn't know how to respond to such a straightforward answer. Su Peijian was about to enter the door when Lin Feixing stopped her again. Are you planning to stop dating for the rest of your life? No. Su Peijian shook her head. She looked very calm. I'm just a little tired. Tired? Lin Feixing nodded and suddenly smiled. Have a good rest then. I'll wait for you to rest. It was a pun. They both understood what the other meant. She understood, and so did he. Good night. After seeing Lin Feixing off, Su Peijian felt a little tired. After a few months, Lin Feixing was filled with hope. But in fact, she didn't have that kind of thought. Life was good now. She was very satisfied. Peace and tranquility. She went to work every day and spent time with Xiang Kaiping. Occasionally, when Su Chenghui and his wife came to Rome City, they would visit her, but not often. Usually, they contacted each other more by phone. Other than Su Chenghui and his wife, Su Yusen also called her often and sent her messages. It was as if he was afraid that she would take things too hard. In fact, they were thinking too much. She wouldn't take things too hard. Nothing was worth thinking about all the time. Even if there was, she would try her best to forget it. The elevator was at the corner of the entrance. There was a safety ladder next to it. Su Peijian walked inside. She suddenly felt a grip on her wrist. She was startled. Before she could react, her body had been pulled into the stairwell. Su Peijian almost screamed, but her scream was muffled by someone. Just like that, her voice was stuck in her throat. "Don't scream. It's me." His voice stopped Su Peijian struggling. The stairwell was dark, and the lights were controlled by voice. Ling Jing's voice was very soft, not enough to turn on the lights. With the light outside, she saw Ling Jing's face. At the same time, she smelled the alcohol on his body. Su Peijian calmed down and stopped struggling. Ling Jing also let go of her hand. As soon as he let go, Su Peijian went to pull the door of the stairwell. Her wrist was tightened again. She was pulled by Ling Jing again. Su Peijian turned to look at Ling Jing. With the light outside, she saw his face hidden in the darkness. The corners of his lips were raised with a hint of mockery. "What is young Master Ling doing?" "What? You don't want to be the young master of the Ling family anymore? Do you want to change your profession and become a robber?" The light was dim, so Ling Jing couldn't see her expression clearly. She was the same. Her body was suddenly hugged by Ling Jing. She didn't have time to react or struggle. That person had already buried his face in her neck. "I regret it." His deep, hoarse voice was accompanied by his warm breath brushing against her neck. She didn't move. Ling Jing spoke again in the darkness. "I regret it. I regret letting go of you." Holding her waist, Ling Jing's arms were very tight. His expression couldn't be seen clearly in the darkness, but there was a hint of eagerness in his voice. "Woman, I regret it. Woman, I want you." It was a very quiet atmosphere. After Ling Jing said that, Su Peijian didn't respond. He suddenly became very sure. What did Su Peijian mean? He let go of his hand, but didn't let go of her. He said again with uncertainty. "Let's start over, okay?" What greeted him was a slap on his face. Su Peijian was just angry. After the slap, she realized that she had lost control. Taking a deep breath, she pushed him away and wanted to turn around and leave. But her body was held by him again. Her body was pressed against the door behind her. "Are you angry? If you're angry, let's start over, okay?" Su Peijian raised her hand again, wanting to slap him again, but then put it down. She was a little breathless, and she resisted the suffocating feeling in her heart. She stared coldly at his face in the darkness. "Let go." "I won't let go." Ling Jing held her very tightly, and there was a trace of imperceptible pleading in his voice. "Peijian, I really regret it. Let's start over, okay? I promise, this time, Ling Jing, young Master Ling." "Who do you think you are?" "What?" "Young Master Ling is used to being a young master. You think the world is your home, and you can do whatever you want?" "Sorry, I'm not interested." She coldly pulled his hand away, but she couldn't. Su Peijian raised her foot and stomped hard on his foot. Ling Jing was in pain, but he refused to let go. Su Peijian was angry and looked at him coldly. But because she couldn't see his expression clearly, she stomped harder and harder. In the end, Her foot was numb, but Ling Jing didn't let go of her. She could only withdraw her foot and look at him coldly. Ling Jing, have you had enough of being drunk? Ling Jing looked at her. In his dark phoenix eyes, there was regret, pain, discomfort, and pleading. Unfortunately, the darkness covered his expression, and she couldn't see it clearly. But even if she could see it clearly, Su Peijian wouldn't believe it now. Ling Jing realized this, and his expression became more and more bitter. I'm not drunk. I really regret it. So? You regret it. You want to start over, and I have to go back? Silence. For the first time in his life, Ling Jing felt speechless. Su Peijian's words made him speechless. It took him a long time to find his voice. I just want to start over with you. Start over with me? Su Peijian sneered, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Young Master Ling, do you really know what you're talking about? I'm a prisoner in labor reform. You want to start over with me, a prisoner in labor reform? Ling Jing felt like a needle was pricking his heart. Those 3 words were extremely grating to his ears. Don't say it. He was wrong, he was really wrong. He shouldn't have said those 3 words in front of her. Don't say what? Su Peijian blinked, as if she suddenly understood the flash of pain in his words. Don't say I'm a prisoner in labor reform? Ha! She smiled, and her smile was full of mockery. That's the truth. I'm just a prisoner in labor reform. Young Master Ling, you said that. Ling Jing's body stiffened, and his hand on her waist trembled a little. Don't say it, I beg you, don't say it. I'm sorry. Those 3 extremely obscure words came out of Ling Jing's mouth, which had always been proud. If there was a 3rd person present at this time, their jaw would probably drop. However, Su Peijian didn't feel anything after hearing it. Chapter 873. The stairwell was very quiet. At this time, no one passed by outside. Su Peijian's words were undoubtedly like a needle stabbing into Ling Jing's chest. It was so uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. No. Ling Jing shook his head, his expression full of bitterness. I'm serious this time. Believe me. It wasn't a game, not a show, not a trick. It was him who understood his sincerity and knew that he had been ridiculously wrong. He just wanted her. Serious? I don't know how much young Master Ling's seriousness is worth. Tell me, although I'm not short of money. But I'm really curious. How much can a prisoner like me be worth in young Master Ling's eyes? This time, how much money does young Master Ling plan to use to keep me? Words could sometimes turn into sharp blades. Every word Su Peijian said now was like a knife, stabbing Ling Jing's heart again and again. He suddenly realized that he, who had always thought that he was so strong that he could do anything and had no fear, also had times when he was afraid and didn't dare to face it. Don't say such things. I feel bad. Peijian, I don't want to keep you this time, and I don't want to play with you. I really just want to start over with you. He spoke very, very slowly. Every word he spat out made him feel pain. Really? Su Peijian sneered, obviously not believing him. Ling Jing was anxious, very anxious. He put his hands on her shoulders. Even if he couldn't see clearly, he wanted her to see the sincerity and seriousness in his eyes. Peijian, it was all my fault before. I misunderstood you. I'm sorry. I just. He was too proud. He was so proud that he couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of dislike from the woman he liked. He was so proud that he refused to give her a chance to explain so that he could pretend that he was the one who won. But in reality, he lost completely. Wrong? Su Peijian felt his stiff body and pushed him away. You are young Master Ling, the young master of the Ling family. How could you be wrong? I'm the one who's wrong. I had eyes but failed to recognize you and treated you, young Master Ling, as a pretty boy to keep. I didn't know what was good for me. I didn't realize your identity in time and didn't respect you. It's all my fault. What can you do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong at all. Don't say any more. Don't say it. Ling Jing raised her voice uncontrollably. I beg you, don't say it. Su Peijian did not say anything else. The atmosphere was eerily quiet. Su Peijian could still feel her heart beating out of control. She took a step to the side. Standing in front of the stairwell door, she placed her hand on the doorknob. Turning around, she didn't intend to look at Ling Jing. She raised her head, and the scenes and fragments of their time together seemed to emerge in her mind again. There was a sharp pain in her heart, but she suppressed the pain expressionlessly. She pulled the door open and said in a calm voice, since young Master Ling doesn't want to hear it, then I won't say it. After all, I'm just a convict. I won't stay here and be an eyesore to young Master Ling. Young Master Ling wanted to play and do whatever he wanted to do. It was better to find someone else. I can't afford to accompany you. The door opened and closed, and her body disappeared outside the door. The bright light shone on her face. She squinted her eyes and raised her hand to block the light. At the same time, she suppressed the sourness in her eyes. Then, her footsteps were firm, and she walked in the direction of the elevator without looking back. The moment the door of the stairwell opened, there was light. Ling Jing could see Su Peijian walk out expressionlessly. He stood in the shadows and only felt that the moment the light disappeared, his whole body also fell into darkness. His heart sank. Su Peijian entered the elevator, her legs a little weak. She sighed and realized that she was still more or less affected by Ling Jing. However, she tried her best to reduce the impact. They hadn't seen each other for nearly half a year. She really didn't expect that Ling Jing would give her such a big gift as soon as he came. Did he regret it? Start over? Hee hee. Did he think that life was like a mobile phone that would be turned off and restarted when it got stuck? Then everything would be fine again? Moreover, she didn't believe Ling Jing's words at all. Maybe it was a sudden impulse, or maybe he felt that he had lost face in front of Su Qingsang back then. Adjusting her breathing, Su Peijian smiled and threw those thoughts to the back of her mind. Some things should be left in the past. They should be blown away by the wind and disappear forever. Su Peijian didn't expect that the things she thought had been blown away by the wind were not over. The next day, when she went downstairs to go to work, she saw Ling Jing again. She parked her car at the company yesterday. It wasn't far from the company, and she planned to walk to the company. It would be a good exercise. Unexpectedly seeing Ling Jing in front of her, she paused for a moment, but only for a moment. Soon, she continued to walk forward as if nothing had happened. Her steps were neither fast nor slow. She didn't want Ling Jing to think that his appearance could affect her mood. It was very cold in Rome City in December. It hadn't snowed this year, but the wind made people feel cold. Su Peijian was wearing a light down jacket and a pair of marten boots. She looked very casual. She didn't look like she was going to work, but more like she was going to the street. She was afraid of the cold, so she put 2 sets of professional clothes in the office and changed into them when she got there. At this moment, she tightened the down jacket and directly passed by Ling Jing. However, Ling Jing stood in front of her. If Su Peijian had seen clearly last night, she would have found that Ling Jing was still wearing the clothes from yesterday. He sat in the car for the whole night and smoked for the whole night. At this moment, the smell of alcohol had dissipated, and his whole body was full of the smell of smoke. The smell made Su Peijian frown and take a step back without thinking. There was plenty of light during the day. All his expressions were exposed to the sun. What's the matter? Cold, alienated, indifferent. It was just like when they first met. No, it made him feel worse than when they first met. At least when they first met, they hadn't reached this step yet. Peijian, I'll send you to work. Ling Jing's words made Su Peijian raise her eyebrows. Looking at the anxiety in Ling Jing's eyes, she suddenly smiled. Young Master Ling wants to send me to work. Thank you, I can't afford it. Peijian, don't talk like that. I really feel bad. Bad? Su Peijian looked at the pain in his eyes, and the smile in her eyes deepened. Young Master Ling, I admit that your acting is good. Your acting is really good. It's so good that you played me around. I really thank you for wronging a young master like you. For me, you spent so much effort pretending to be poor, pretending to be a gangster, and pretending to be pitiful. You acted like it was real. Thinking about it this way, I really didn't lose out. No, you acted so deeply before, so deeply that I believed it without a doubt. But young Master Ling, this is a show. There will be a time when the curtain will fall. You've acted enough, and you've played enough. Can you be magnanimous and let me go? No, I'm really not. I'm not acting this time. I'm serious. Perhaps it was acting at the beginning, but at the same time, he also got into character and unknowingly put himself in it. Su Peijian, I'm serious. I really want to start over with you. Do you really want to start over with me? Or do you think that you haven't played enough with me, a prisoner through labor? Don't say those 3 words again. I beg you. He couldn't listen to those 3 words. Hearing them made his heart ache. What 3 words? A prisoner through labor? Su Peijian spread her hands and looked indifferent. Am I wrong? That's the truth. I'm a prisoner through labor. Young Master Ling said that. I'm just repeating your words. Su Peijian, it's all my fault. Everything, it's all my fault. Ling Jing stepped forward and held her hand. He closed his eyes. He really couldn't stand Su Peijian's attitude. I didn't do it on purpose. I was just too angry at that time. You know. That Hui Yifan, he sent me some photos. I saw it at the time, and I went crazy with anger. I thought those photos were real. Besides, you guys used to be good. I believed it. Su Peijian stood there and listened to him continue with a cold face. Her expression was indifferent, and she looked unmoved. Ling Jing really regretted it. He thought of Su Peijian saying that he had no brain yesterday. It wasn't that he didn't have a brain. It was just that at that moment, anger took over his rationality, plus the embarrassment of being discovered by her. He didn't know how to explain his identity, but he just had to receive those photos. The 2 things were mixed together, so he lost his rationality for a moment. I was wrong. I regret it. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have not given you a chance to explain. I shouldn't have jumped to a conclusion without asking anything. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. The winter sun slowly rose and shone on her body, but there was no warmth at all. Her fingertips were slightly cold. Ling Jing held her hand very tightly, as if this could give him some warmth. Are you done? There were some things that Su Peijian knew yesterday. Indeed, the person who sent the photos was Hui Yifan, and it had nothing to do with Ling Jing. Seeing those photos made Ling Jing angry. In the end, it wasn't Hui Yifan who said those hurtful words. But so what? Su Peijian took a step forward and didn't rush to withdraw her hand. She just stared at Ling Jing. You said that you were angry because you saw Hui Yifan's photo? Yes, but before that? Su Peijian's voice was very cold, and her expression was even colder. Before that, who were you? Ling Jing. Wasn't it? Before that, your identity was already the young master of the Ling family. Wasn't it? You were injured at that time, and I brought you back. Then, by accident, I thought of you as a hooligan, a gigolo, and I said I wanted to keep you. You could be angry, you could leave, or you could refuse. Right? Yes. Ling Jing couldn't defend himself. It was indeed like that. He could refuse, or he could leave. You didn't refuse. You agreed. On the surface, you signed an agreement with me and said that I would keep you for half a year. In fact, at that time, you felt uncomfortable and unwilling. Right? You had a chance to explain the situation. As long as you told me your identity, I promised that I would give up the idea. But you didn't. Not only did you not, but you also followed my wishes and acted with me. You played the role of a gigolo, a hooligan to perfection. In the end, you made me believe that you were a hooligan with nothing. You were a gigolo who relied on me to keep you, right? Right? And then? The anger in your heart didn't dissipate. Your unwillingness was still there. You just hid it. You decided to zhou xian, to hide your identity and stay by my side. At that time, you should have started planning, right? The series of questions made Ling Jing's voice stuck in his throat. There were many things he couldn't say. He could only stare at her blankly. Peixian, let me finish. In fact, at that time, you started thinking about taking revenge on me. Didn't you? Ling Jing couldn't refute that. What she said was the truth. I noticed that I might have a different feeling for you. Lin Feixing appeared. He was pursuing me. My mother wanted me to get married, so I decided to stop our relationship. At that time, I completely angered you. On the surface, you seemed to agree. But in fact, you were thinking about how to make me fall in love with you. In the end, you could declare victory in front of me and dump me. Peixian, I didn't. I only thought that way at first. Then, you appeared in front of me. Not only did you act like a hooligan and pretend to be pitiful, but you also hurt yourself on purpose. In order to convince me, he even bought that bungalow. Everything was just a ruse. And you were the one who set it up. I'm the one who fell into your trap, the one who fell into your trap. No, it's not exactly like that. I was just. She was mad. You were just unwilling. You were just angry. You just wanted me to submit to you. And you got it later. I believed in you. I chose you. You succeeded. You also won. After you won, you felt that you were tired of playing the game and wanted to end it. So, after receiving those photos, you just had an excuse, a reason. Those photos successfully made you decide to get rid of me and complete your original plan to take revenge on me, didn't they? The series of words were sharp and direct. Who was Su Peixian? She had been with Su Chenghui in the business world since she was a child. She had her own vision and vision. That's right, Ling Jing said it seriously. It sounded as if they really didn't trust each other enough. But what was the truth? Ling Jing, from the beginning to the end, whether you were sincere or not, your feelings for me were built on deception. An encounter that started with deception, a relationship that was decided to be based on revenge from the beginning. Does it have anything to do with misunderstanding? Her aura was too fierce, her words too sharp and direct, and every word she said was to the point. Ling Jing was speechless. Standing there for a long time, she couldn't think of anything to refute. Su Peixian finally pulled her hand back. Looking at some stubble on Ling Jing's chin, she took a step back. Chapter 874. What Su Peixian cared about was not just a misunderstanding, but deception. From the beginning, Ling Jing had the intention of deception and revenge. It was not a good beginning, a process full of calculations and conspiracies. Love? Haha. Love in the name of deception, full of calculations and conspiracies, how could there be sincerity? The wind was cold, and the sun couldn't shine into his heart. Ling Jing stood there. He had always been proud, arrogant, and unrestrained. But now he felt that he couldn't say a word. Seeing that Su Peixian was about to walk past him, he suddenly reached out and pulled her back. Peixian. The two of them stood next to each other, and he turned his head to look at her expression. Her side profile was beautiful, and her expression was cold. His heart felt like it was being pricked by needles, bursts of pain. It may not have been very good at the beginning, but later I really fell in love with you. Peijian, I love you. It was a simple 3 words. His eyes were focused and full of his sincerity. Su Peijian turned her face to look at Ling Jing, not missing the focus and deep love in his eyes. Last time, young Master Ling said that you weren't tired of me, a prisoner through labor. Now it seems that it's true. The self-deprecating and sarcastic tone made Ling Jing feel ashamed. His lips moved, but his words became weak. Peijian, Sangnan Avenue, 59, do you know it? Su Peijian's words made Ling Jing confused. She smiled. Rome City Women's Prison. There are many people like me there. If young Master Ling thinks it's fun and you haven't had enough, I think you should go there and try. Peijian, Su Peijian pulled her hand back. She wanted to walk to work, but now she was not in the mood. She looked at a taxi that just stopped by the roadside. She directly got into the car and left. Ling Jing was left alone by the roadside, enjoying the cold wind alone. It blew into one's heart, making one feel cold from the inside out. Night. The private room smelled of alcohol, and the coffee table in front of the L-shaped sofa was full of all kinds of alcohol. There were also a few empty bottles mixed among them. Gu Xiu looked at Ling Jing sitting on the sofa, drinking like a pig. He didn't dare to ask the young master to drink less. His phone rang at the right time. He hurried forward and handed the phone to Ling Jing. Young master, it's a call from madam. I'm not answering. Without raising his head, Ling Jing threw away the cup in his hand, took another bottle of wine, and poured it directly into his mouth. Young master. Gu Xiu had been with Ling Jing for a long time, but this was the first time Ling Jing had ever experienced such a situation. No, there was another time half a year ago. After Su Qingsang took Su Peijian away, Ling Jing threw a big tantrum in the villa. He was done venting his anger. He asked someone to bring him wine and drank wildly for the whole night. Gu Xiu almost thought that Ling Jing would be poisoned by alcohol and had to be sent to the hospital. However, Ling Jing wasn't sent to the hospital at that time. Instead, she didn't go crazy after getting drunk. He always raised his hand and pointed in the direction of the door. His voice was unsteady but full of anger. Isn't it just a woman? Rare? Go, all of you go. I can't wait for you to leave and not be an eyesore in front of me. Get lost. All of you, scram. That time was almost the same as now. Gu Xiu watched Ling Jing get drunk, he watched him go crazy, he watched him repeat a few words over and over again. In the end, he couldn't speak or drink anymore. Gu Xiu didn't ask for help from others and personally sent him back to his room. Woman, don't go. If he hadn't heard Ling Jing's murmur when he sent Ling Jing back to his room, he would almost have thought that Ling Jing lost his temper and drank because he was humiliated by Su Qingsang. He thought that Ling Jing would go to Su Peijian when he woke up the next day. However, he didn't expect that Ling Jing would wake up the next day as if nothing had happened, He would do what he had to do. For a time, Gu Xiu thought that the murmur he heard that day was his illusion. Ling Jing couldn't have said that. Now looking at Ling Jing's appearance, he still remembered that Ling Jing stopped Su Peijian and talked for a long time. Although he was far away and didn't hear what they said at all. But from Ling Jing's tone and expression, Gu Xiu knew that the young master's tribulation had come again. Wasn't this Su Peijian Ling Jing's tribulation? Every time Ling Jing met her, it was abnormal. It seemed that more than half a year had passed, but Su Peijian could still affect Ling Jing. Young master. Seeing that Ling Jing was about to drink again, Gu Xiu couldn't let her drink anymore. Don't drink anymore. No matter how much you drink, Miss Su won't know. She doesn't feel bad, right? When he didn't mention Su Peijian, Ling Jing's face became more and more ugly. He picked up the wine on the table and was about to continue, but Gu Xiu pressed his hand. Young master, this woman's personality is similar. No matter how hard her mouth is, her heart is soft. If you have any misunderstanding with Miss Su, Just solve it. If you want her to turn back, isn't it easy? You can make her soft-hearted. Once her heart softens, maybe she will turn back. Ling Jing stopped drinking and looked up at Gu Xiu. It seemed that he just remembered that Gu Xiu had a girlfriend who was talking about marriage. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Gu Xiu as if thinking about his words. What did you say? Make her soft-hearted? Yes. Now, as long as he could stop Ling Jing from drinking, Gu Xiu was willing to try anything. He looked at Ling Jing carefully and said very cautiously, "Young master, think about it. No matter how much Miss Su misunderstands you, she is still a woman. If you get hurt and bleed a little, won't she feel bad for you every minute? If she loves you wholeheartedly, won't your chance come? Go on." Ling Jing was interested and stopped drinking. He just grabbed Gu Xiu's hand and asked him to continue. Gu Xiu's head hurt. Didn't he just say it clearly enough? "Young master, what I mean is, it's useless for you to hide here and drink. You should let Miss Su see you like this. I think Miss Su is the most soft-hearted person. Maybe when she sees you drinking to drown your sorrows and become like this because of her, she will be very touched and then forgive you." In fact, Gu Xiu didn't have much experience in love. His wife was his first girlfriend. He came up with such an idea because he was forced by Ling Jing. However, Ling Jing listened. Not only did he listen, but he also felt that it made sense. That's right. He nodded. He should let Su Peijian see how sad and uncomfortable he was now. Well, no. He had to do something else. Back then, Su Peijian picked him up because he was injured, which showed that she was kind-hearted. Since that was the case, it was his chance. Okay. Ling Jing stood up and patted Gu Xiu on the shoulder. If it's done, I will give you a raise. After saying this, he quickly got up and left the private room. Su Peijian was busy with work today and stayed up late. It wasn't that she had so many things to do, but it was her birthday in a few days. According to last year's tradition, Xiang Kaiping would definitely celebrate her birthday with her. She took care of things in advance, not just on the day of her birthday. She thought that she might as well make some arrangements. From her birthday to the New Year's holiday, she would take a few days out and spend a few days with Xiang Kaiping. The location had been chosen, and the plane tickets had been booked. She would leave on her birthday and come back after New Year's. Thinking of her birthday, she couldn't help but think of her birthday last year. Just the day before her birthday, on Christmas Day, she picked up Ling Jing. At that time, she thought that she was just bringing back a drunkard. Unexpectedly, realizing that she was thinking of that liar who was full of lies, Su Peijian shook her head, packed up her things, and planned to leave. She got off the elevator and went to the underground parking lot. When she walked to the car, she was shocked by the corpse lying next to her car. It didn't seem right to call it a corpse. The corpse on the ground seemed to be stained with blood, facing the direction of her car. She could see that there was a lot of blood on the body, but she quickly turned her attention to other places. She was already very familiar with the figure of the other party. After all, the two of them had shared a bed for many days. Seeing the blood on the body, Su Peijian was still shocked. Looking at the blood on the other party's body, her heart stopped beating for a moment. She covered her chest with her hand and stood there for a long time, unable to move. The place where Ling Jing fell happened to be in front of her car door. If she wanted to open the door, she would have to move him. Su Peijian stood there for a long time, staring at Ling Jing's corpse for a long time. She finally recovered and realized that something was wrong. She slowly bent down and turned Ling Jing's body over. There was blood on the other party's chest. She didn't check the other party's wound, but directly patted Ling Jing's shoulder. Get up. Ling Jing lay there without moving. Su Peijian looked at his tightly closed eyes, gritted her teeth, grabbed Ling Jing's arm hard, and dragged him to the side. Ling Jing seemed to be dragged awake by her. He opened his eyes with a painful look on his face. When he saw Su Peijian, his eyes lit up. If you want to pretend to be dead, go somewhere else. Su Peijian interrupted him and at the same time let go of her hand, letting his body fall to the ground. If you're injured, go to the hospital. Peijian? Why was it different from what he thought? Ling Jing was stunned. I'm injured. I said, if you're injured, go to the hospital. Su Peijian didn't move at all. Seeing that Ling Jing's body was already some distance away from her car door, she opened the door without thinking and got in the car. The moment she was about to start the car, Ling Jing panicked. He quickly stood up and tried to open the door. Peijian? Su Peijian didn't say a word and just looked at him coldly. Only then did Ling Jing realize that he had been exposed. I'm not, I'm just, Su Peijian pulled his hand away. Ling Jing, you're really hopeless. After saying this, she slammed the car door. She started the car and left. Chapter 875. Christmas. In the past, it was Su Peijian's birthday. Today, it became Su Qingsang's birthday. Unlike in previous years, Su Qingsang called Su Peijian this year and invited her to have dinner together. She refused. There were many people in the Hua family, and Hua Yifan was there. She didn't want to join in the fun. Su Qingsang probably knew her concerns and repeatedly made it clear to her that it was just a very private party. It was just Hua Jiniao's childhood friends and their girlfriends. There would be no one else. Su Peijian thought about it and didn't refuse. She said goodbye to Xiang Kaiping and went to Su Qingsang's party. Last time, Su Qingsang took her away from Ling Jing's house. Although she was confident that she could get away in the end, she did owe Su Qingsang a favor. She remembered it too. Hua Jiniao's childhood friends had all found girlfriends in the past 2 or 3 years. Li Junxing brought Yizhen. Wan Xianyang had been pursuing Shi Mengwan, but now he had a new girlfriend. Su Changlong and Qing Xianyun were married. The only single person present was Tang Mohan. Because the seat next to him was empty, and Su Qingsang's seat was next to it. Su Peijian didn't think much and looked at the empty seat and sat down. She didn't realize that something was wrong until she sat down. Su Qingsang blinked at her. She suddenly felt a little awkward. Tang Mohan, on the other hand, didn't look awkward at all. He pushed a glass in front of her. Do you want to drink or drink? Drink. Tang Mohan was already over 30, and he was the only one in this group who was still single. Watching a group of childhood friends get married and have children. It was like Hua Jiniao had a pair of twins. Tang Mohan wasn't in a hurry at all. Drink this. Plum wine with a low alcohol content. It's like buying a drink. Thank you. Su Peijian picked up the glass. It was indeed a very light wine with almost no smell of alcohol. She had never attended Hua Jiniao's childhood friends' parties. She had attended many parties in Hua Yifan's circle. However, he took a serious look at the other people present. She was willing to admit that the circle was really interesting. Your company's recent project in England is doing well. The sudden voice made her turn around and realize that Tang Mohan was talking to her. Thank you. He was referring to the project led by Su Chenghui and Lin Feixing's company. I know Boss Lin too. He admires you very much. Tang Mohan was holding a glass in his hand and drinking. His posture was very elegant. Su Peijian smiled. Mr. Lin, you're exaggerating. I'm not as good as he says. Tang Mohan turned to look at Su Peijian and suddenly smiled. Not bad. You know your place. Su Peijian didn't understand what he meant. Tang Mohan smiled. Our company is preparing to start a similar project in Australia. The project is quite big. If your company is interested, we can pick a time to discuss it. Sure. Su Peijian wouldn't mind Tang Mohan's attitude if she didn't earn money. Maximizing benefits was what she wanted. As for Tang Mohan, she didn't think that he would be interested in her. If it was just a collaboration, that would be fine. Tang Mohan raised his glass and clinked it with hers. I look forward to working with you. I look forward to working with you. After clinking glasses and finishing the drink in the glass, there was nothing more to say. Su Peijian was a little bored sitting there, so she took the opportunity to go out and go to the bathroom outside. The door of the private room opposite her opened at that moment. She saw the person sitting inside from the corner of her eye. Ling Jing. He was sitting there drinking. It seemed that he had drunk a lot. After just a glance, she looked away, turned around, and continued to walk forward without looking back. Her footsteps were very fast, but the person who had been drinking inside was even faster. The door was open, and someone rushed out from inside. As he walked, many of the wine bottles on the coffee table fell to the ground. The noise was followed by a knock on the door, and before she could react, her wrist was grabbed by someone. She turned to look at Ling Jing, and he dragged her into her private room. Su Peijian wanted to scream, but she saw Gu Xiu come out. He was used to reading people's eyes and cleared away the irrelevant people. After a few seconds, the person who stayed inside came out. She was brought into the private room by Ling Jing. She looked at him coldly, but at that moment, he let go of her hand and blocked the door. For more than half a year, she had never thought of seeing Ling Jing. But in the past few days, she had met Ling Jing one after another. If it was a coincidence, she really didn't believe it. Is it interesting? She looked at Ling Jing, who was blocking the door with his body and not letting her out. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian. He reached out and directly hugged her into his arms. He lowered his head and was about to kiss her. Su Peijian's body struggled for a moment. As her hands were held behind her back by him, his lips finally touched. Their lips met, and their lips were filled with the taste of each other's alcohol. She was like this, and so was he. However, the taste of alcohol in his mouth was much stronger. Su Peijian didn't respond. She let him plunder and never let go. He kept rubbing her lips, but he couldn't go any deeper. The eagerness in his heart made him turn around with her in his arms, and his body was pressed against the door. His breathing became heavy. His hands were on the door behind her, and he looked at her fixedly. His eyes were bloodshot, and his breath was hot. Compared to Su Peijian's cold expression, there was no fluctuation in her eyes. He caressed her cheek. This woman made him love and hate her at the same time. Can we forget all the things that happened in the past? Can we reset and start over? Can't we? His voice was very conflicted. He held her tightly and refused to let go. No. Her voice was even colder than her expression. Ling Jing felt a slight pain in his heart. Tell me, what do you have to do to forgive me? Forgive? That was really a difficult question to answer. Su Peijian was also straightforward. Never contact each other. Impossible. If he hadn't realized his feelings, he could pretend that nothing had happened. But since he had already realized his feelings, how could he let her go? Because of the broken wine bottle in the private room, the smell of alcohol was very strong. Su Peijian didn't like this kind of place. If it weren't for Su Qingsang, she wouldn't have planned to come today. Su Peijian. He leaned over and kissed her lips. His voice was a little pleading. Forgive me, please. Seeing that she was unmoved, he suddenly became angry. He grabbed her waist and used force to rub her into his body. Do you still remember? You promised me something. You promised me. Su Peijian frowned slightly. It seemed that she only remembered at this moment that she seemed to have promised him something. Before she could recall, he had already said his request. I know you have a good memory. You remember, right? You said that you can promise me one thing. I'm mentioning it now. My request is that you forgive me. Seeing that she ignored him, he pressed his forehead against hers and stubbornly asked for her answer. Say that you forgive me. Su Peijian looked at the man. The man's eyes were bloodshot and his breathing was rapid. The two of them were very close, so close that she could hear the other's heartbeat. She just looked at him. When the man was about to explode, she said the words that he wanted to hear. "I forgive you." The surprise came too suddenly. Ling Jing stared at her with her eyes wide open. She could hardly believe her ears. "What did you say? Say it again." "I forgive you. Can you let go?" Su Peijian put one hand on his chest. She was much calmer than Ling Jing thought. "Don't you understand? I said I forgive you. You can let go." "No, since you forgive me, then we..." Ling Jing. Su Peijian interrupted him rudely. "You only asked me to promise you one condition. You said you wanted me to forgive you, and I promised. But forgiving you and being with you are two conditions." But the wine that Ling Jing had just drunk seemed to finally start to rush to his brain. He looked at Su Peijian with a headache. "It's not like this. It shouldn't be like this. You promised me. You promised yourself. Isn't that right? Let go. You promised me." "Ling Jing. I've done what I promised you. It's not like this. It wasn't like this." What he wanted her to do wasn't like this. Even if she said she forgave him, he knew that she hadn't forgiven him in her heart. "If you're really willing to forgive me, you should promise to give me a chance and start over with me." Ling Jing. "Don't you understand? I can forgive you, but I won't be with you anymore." "Why?" Since she could forgive him, why couldn't she accept him again? "Because your credibility with me is zero," Su Peijian said bluntly. "I don't know which of your words are true and which are false. I don't know what's waiting for me after you pretend to be deeply in love with me. I don't know which day you, young Master Ling, will bring up the past on a whim. I won't, I promise, I really won't." "Really?" "Unfortunately, I don't believe you. I really won't. I can swear." In the future, Ling Jing was eager to prove himself, but Su Peijian didn't want to hear it. She pushed him away and looked at him fixedly. "Ling Jing, you're a good girl." "Ling Jing, my identity, my past, my experience, they are all facts, unchangeable facts. I am a prisoner, I am a woman who has had other men. Why should I believe your oath, your promise?" She interrupted his explanation and promise. For Su Peijian, it was hard to accumulate trust, but it was easy to destroy it. Ling Jing was speechless. Su Peijian took a step to the side and put her hand on the door handle. Chapter 876. Ling Jing stubbornly refused to let Su Peijian leave. If she could really forgive herself, why didn't she let it all go? He and she had had a good time. Didn't they? He hadn't forgotten. He didn't believe that she had. The two of them were so compatible, both in bed and out of bed. They actually had a tacit understanding, didn't they? They really loved each other, didn't they? Is it so important how it started? Isn't the process more important than the result? Su Peijian turned to look into his eyes. The lights in the private room weren't very bright. She could see Ling Jing's eyes clearly. "For me, yes. The process and the result are important, but the beginning is also very important." Su Peijian sat in the designated driver's car. When she passed by Rome City's Jiangxin Park, she found someone setting off fireworks there. It was Christmas. There were many people celebrating outside. She asked the driver to slow down a little. Her eyes were a little blurred as she looked at the fireworks outside. When she left Ling Jing's private room and closed the door, she heard Ling Jing suddenly say 5 words. "Peijian, I love you." His uncharacteristically low and hoarse voice was full of pain and entanglement. At that moment, Su Peijian's footsteps stopped there. In the end, she still left without looking back. In the past, she wouldn't care about things outside of her body, nor would she care about the eyes of others. However, this entanglement with Ling Jing made her see through many things. In fact, if it was just the misunderstanding that day, she really wouldn't take it to heart. She could understand the decisions made by people under impulse. After getting along with Ling Jing for so long, she could more or less see his personality. But she really couldn't forgive Ling Jing's original motive and the hurtful words he said. She didn't like to dig up people's old debts. But at the same time, she didn't like others to dig up her old debts. She could maintain this little bit of contact with Su Qingsang now because Su Qingsang could let it go. If she could, naturally, she could too. When many people talked about things that had nothing to do with them, they always liked to say that the past was the past. However, they didn't know that sometimes the hurt couldn't be passed. Closing her eyes, Su Peijian emptied her mind and left Ling Jing behind. She didn't think about anything. Kyoto, Japan. Su Peijian stood in front of the simple wooden door and turned to look at Xiang Kaiping. We are half a month late. The maple leaves here are almost all gone. The colored glass courtyard was a relatively small tourist attraction in Kyoto, Japan. It was open twice a year. Cherry blossoms in spring and maple leaves in autumn. Su Peijian and the others were late. It was already past the opening hours, but they could still vaguely see the red leaves all over the mountain, as well as the shadow of autumn. It was a nice day. She and Xiang Kaiping had been in Japan for 3 days. 2 days ago, he brought Xiang Kaiping to Tianlong Temple and Qingshui Temple. Xiang Kaiping had been to Japan once before, but that time, Su Qingsang had taken her to Tokyo. There was also Nara's hot spring. This time, when Su Peijian brought her to the capital, she had never been there before. He was very excited along the way. Of course, he was excited not because he could come and play, but because he could come with his daughter. This made her happier than the last time she went to Europe with a group of ginseng. Mom, it's already past the open season. I don't know if they'll let us in. Wait a minute, I'll go and ask. It's okay for her. It's okay even if she can't. Anyway, since we're here, we'll just take it as exercise and walk around. Okay. Su Peijian went up and knocked on the door. After a serious conversation with the people inside, she pointed in the direction of Kaiping. After about 5 minutes, the people in the temple finally relented and agreed to let them in. The low-key, simple wooden door was a picturesque scene of early winter inside. Although the maple leaves were already damaged, they could still see a fiery red. Xiang Kaiping looked at the beautiful scenery in front of her and was in a good mood. It's so beautiful here. Yes, it's beautiful. Su Peijian handed a bag in her hand to Xiang Kaiping. There's a place for tourists to copy scriptures. Do you want to copy them? The most special thing about this temple was not only the beautiful scenery. Another special feature was that there would be scriptures for the guests to copy here. Tourists would write down their wishes and offer them in front of Buddha, asking Buddha to bless their wishes to come true. Okay. Xiang Kaiping was not a religious person in the past, but ever since she recognized her daughter and a series of things happened, she began to believe. Su Peijian took Xiang Kaiping up the stairs to the second floor. In addition to enjoying the beautiful scenery, there were also tables for tourists to copy scriptures. Xiang Kaiping was very devout. Su Peijian was only there to accompany her. Seeing her like that, she sat down. She did not believe in Buddhism and did not understand Buddhist scriptures. Looking at the words on it, there was a strange but familiar feeling. She knew the words, but when put together, she did not know what they meant. Glancing at Xiang Kaiping, she picked up the pen and started copying. Every stroke, every word, and every sentence. Slowly, she became focused and did not even notice that there was another person in the room. After he finished copying, the last blank space was for him to write his name and wish. After writing her name, Su Peijian was stunned for a long time. Her wish? Thinking about her current state of life, she did not seem to have any wishes. Her relationship with Su Chenghui and Li Qianxue had eased, and her relationship with Xiang Kaiping was considered close. Even Su Qingsang, whom she had never liked before, was now in contact with again. She did not have to worry too much about the company, as long as she did not court disaster. She believed that before she retired, her life would only get better, not worse. Then, she really could not think of any wishes. Looking out of the window, she saw the red and green mountain scenery. Life was too short. The 4 seasons changed, and a lifetime passed in a few spring and autumn. Closing her eyes, she wrote down 8 words. No desire, no love, strong. When she finished writing, she found that Xiang Kaiping was still copying. She quietly got up, wanting to stretch her muscles and bones. Her gaze fell on the figure sitting on the other side. For a moment, she thought there was something wrong with her eyes. Ling Jing? Why was he here? Ling Jing sat diagonally across from her. He lowered his head and was very focused on copying scriptures. Su Peijian inexplicably felt a little uncomfortable. She wanted to say something, but it seemed that she could not say anything. The room was very quiet. Ling Jing seemed to be very serious and did not notice that she had finished copying. At this time, there were no other tourists. Su Peijian got up, turned around, and walked to the window to look at the scenery outside. The mountain wind was very strong, and the capital was a little cold at this season. She crossed her arms, feeling complicated and indescribable. Xiang Kaiping quickly finished copying. She got up and walked in front of her, asking her where to put the copied scriptures. Su Peijian took the scripture from her hand. Just put it in the temple hall downstairs and worship it in front of the Buddha. Xiang Kaiping wanted to say something, but realized that there were other people present, so she whispered, "Then let's go down." Su Peijian nodded, forcing herself not to look in Ling Jing's direction. Unexpectedly, Ling Jing had also finished copying at this time. He got up, walked in front of them, smiled at them, and nodded again. Xiang Kaiping had always been a warm person, so she also returned a smile. Seeing Xiang Kaiping smile, Ling Jing immediately wanted to say something, but when he saw Su Peijian's gloomy face, he could only shut up. He went straight in the direction of the downstairs. Out of the room, downstairs, and through the lobby was the temple hall of the colored glass courtyard. At this time, there were monks chanting scriptures inside. Although they were using a language that Xiang Kaiping did not understand, it did not reduce the devotion in her heart. "I'm going to worship the Buddha. Help me put this on the table." "Okay." Su Peijian nodded. She took the 2 copied scriptures to the table and saw Xiang Kaiping's wish at a glance. "I hope that my daughter Su Peijian can find happiness." This simple sentence made Su Peijian's heart tremble. She knew very well that Xiang Kaiping had always been a very traditional, very simple woman. But she was still moved by this prayer. Compared to her, she seemed to be much colder. When she put the scriptures on the table, she saw the handwritten Buddhist scripture on the top. She glanced at it and saw her name on it. "I hope that Su Peijian can forgive me and be with me." Childish. Ridiculous. Boring. Did he think that she would be moved by him doing something like this? Would she forgive him and agree to be with him? Su Peijian expressionlessly placed the scriptures she had copied on the table and took a step back. When she saw Xiang Kaiping, who was sincerely worshipping Buddha, she put her palms together and closed her eyes with sincerity. She had no wish in her heart. She only hoped that Xiang Kaiping would be healthy and that the people she cared about would be safe and happy. Feeling a slight movement beside her, she looked to her side. Ling Jing had not left yet. He also stood beside her devoutly, with his hands together and his eyes closed. Su Peijian looked at him and thought about the wish he had just written. His hands, which were hanging by his side, clenched tightly. Soon, he pretended that nothing had happened and looked elsewhere. Xiang Kaiping happened to be done. She walked to Xiang Kaiping and gestured for her to leave with her. The exit was on the other side. Along the corridor of the Japanese-style building, they passed through another room and left the main building. When they came out, the cold wind blew on Xiang Caiping's face. The temperature here is fine. It's not colder than Rome City. Yes. She had seen the weather forecast before. It seemed that it would snow in Rome City in the next few days. I don't know if it will snow here. If it does, it should be beautiful. If you like it, I can come with you when it snows here. That's not necessary. Xiang Caiping patted her hand and smiled gently. You are already busy with work. You don't have to accompany an old woman like me every day. If I want to come next time, I can come with the tour group. Su Peijian did not respond. Xiang Caiping's expectations of her were too low. As they spoke, they had already walked up the stairs. He heard light footsteps coming from behind him. Chapter 877. Ling Jing didn't look at Su Peijian. Instead, she looked at Xiang Caiping and spoke in a surprised voice. Hey, are you from China, too? Xiang Caiping turned around in surprise. Hello, are you from China, too? Su Peijian stood by the side and watched coldly as Ling Jing pretended not to know her. She gave him a warning look. Ling Jing didn't seem to notice her eyes. He stood in front of Xiang Caiping with a smile and politeness on his face. Yes, I'm from China, too. Which part of China are you from? When he said this, he deliberately revealed a bit of accent. Sure enough, Xiang Caiping's eyes lit up. I'm from Rome City. What a coincidence. I'm from Rome City, too. Ling Jing smiled brightly and looked at Su Peijian. When she saw the coldness in her eyes, she quickly looked back at Xiang Caiping's face. Are you here to play, too? Can you take a photo for me? She took out her phone and handed it to Xiang Caiping. I'm old and can't do much. Let my daughter take a photo for you. She glanced at Su Peijian and gestured for Su Peijian to help. Su Peijian stood there and didn't move. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian and didn't get annoyed when she didn't move. Sister, you look so young. Your daughter is already so old. I can't tell. If you didn't tell me, I would have thought she was your sister. Ha 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 ha. As long as it was a woman, there was no one who didn't like to be praised as young. Xiang Caiping smiled more happily because of Ling Jing's words. You're really good at talking. She turned to look at Su Peijian. Peijian, take a photo for this gentleman. Su Peijian pursed her lips into a straight line. She looked at the phone that Ling Jing handed over and took it with no expression. Wait a minute. Ling Jing took a few steps back and stood on the steps in the courtyard, looking at Su Peijian intently. In Xiang Caiping's eyes, it was just an ordinary tourist taking photos. Su Peijian saw the different meaning in her eyes. She didn't want to take a photo of Ling Jing at all, even if she was willing to admit that Ling Jing was very handsome under the camera. He almost didn't need to pose, and he already looked very stylish. Are you done? Ling Jing still wanted to ask such a question. Su Peijian pursed her lips into a straight line again and pressed the shutter button. She did it on purpose. She didn't take a picture or look for an angle. His hand trembled, and a piece of paper was smashed. When he pressed down again, he only slapped a body, not even a head. Ling Jing didn't even look at the 3 photos that Su Peijian had taken. But she just returned the phone to Ling Jing. Without saying a word, he planned to leave after filming. Before he left, he did not forget to glare at Ling Jing, his eyes full of warning. Ling Jing didn't seem to be affected by her gaze at all. Thank you. He took the phone and pretended to look at the photos inside. When he saw his headless self, he did not feel the slightest bit angry. Su Peijian looked at him and smiled even more brightly than before. Then, she walked up to Xiang Caiping. Big sister, why don't you do it? As he spoke, he did not forget to show Xiang Caiping the photo he had just taken. Xiang Caiping looked at it and gasped. Peijian? The photos Su Peijian had taken of her were all pretty. Su Peijian almost wanted to clench his teeth. If Xiang Kaiping wasn't here, she had no doubt that she would directly strangle Ling Jing. Sorry, my hand shook. It's okay. It's cold here. Seeing that Ling Jing was still making excuses for Su Peijian, Xiang Kaiping felt very embarrassed. Sir. I'm sorry. Big sister, it's okay. He said it was okay, but Xiang Kaiping felt embarrassed. She glanced at Su Peijian, her tone not blaming, but a bit more reminding. Peijian, take a good photo for him. Su Peijian inhaled again and again, restraining herself again and again. She resisted the urge to explode and took more than a dozen photos of Ling Jing in one breath. Finally, she handed it to him expressionlessly. Thank you. Ling Jing thanked her with a smile. Looking at Xiang Kaiping and Su Peijian, he spoke very warmly. Let me take a group photo for you too. Su Peijian wanted to refuse, but Xiang Kaiping nodded without hesitation. Okay. She took out her phone and handed it to Ling Jing. Sir, you are so kind. Thank you. You're welcome. Ling Jing took Xiang Kaiping's phone and gestured for Su Peijian to stand with Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijian didn't want to cooperate at all, but she couldn't resist Xiang Kaiping's enthusiasm. The mother and daughter stood in the winding path. The maple leaves on the mountain were almost all gone. But Su Peijian was beautiful. Ling Jing held the phone and took a photo of them very seriously. After taking the photo, she handed the phone to Xiang Kaiping. Big sister, look at it. What do you think? Okay. Su Peijian had given Xiang Kaiping a new phone before she left Europe. The photo function was very good. She took the phone and flipped through it. Immediately, a very happy smile appeared on her face. Peijian, look. This gentleman is really good at taking photos. He took such a beautiful photo of you. It's not me who took beautiful photos. Ling Jing was very good at talking. It's your daughter who is beautiful. Xiang Kaiping was happier to hear someone praise her daughter than herself. Thank you, sir. You are also very handsome. No way. I am not handsome. I don't even have a girlfriend until now. Really? You are so handsome, how can you not have a girlfriend? I think you have too high standards. Yes. My standards are very high. I don't like ordinary women, but the women I like. Ling Jing deliberately paused and then looked at Su Peijian. Su Peijian's eyes were already burning. If Ling Jing dared to say anything, she believed that she would kick him without hesitation. The woman I like doesn't like me. Ling Jing sighed. But it's okay. I will work hard to make her like me. Sir, you are so infatuated. It's okay. You have the heart. I believe that the person you like will definitely like you too. Really? Of course. Xiang Kaiping nodded. Because of the photos Ling Jing took just now, she had a very good impression of Ling Jing. Thank you for your kind words, big sister. Big sister, it is fate that we met. Since we can meet in a foreign country, why don't I be the host and treat you to a meal? No need. Su Peijian didn't want to bear it anymore and directly interrupted. We have already made a reservation. Not understanding why her daughter's attitude was like this, Xiang Kaiping glanced at her. She was clearly asking her what to eat tonight. Why did she say that she had made a reservation now? I see. Ling Jing seemed to be lost. Then I will have to deal with it by myself. Big sister, you don't know how to eat when you eat out alone. Why are you traveling alone? Xiang Kaiping asked casually. I said, the person I like doesn't like me, so I came to the temple here. I pray for the blessings of the gods and Buddhas. I hope that my sincerity will work, and that the person I like will also like me. Sir, you are really sincere. You will definitely get what you want. Thank you, big sister. You are such a good person. Xiang Kaiping was praised again. She couldn't help but turn to look at Su Peijian. Peision, look, this gentleman is also alone. We are all China people. Why don't you see if the table you booked can seat 3 people? If possible, let this gentleman come with us. Although she said that, Su Peision knew that if she didn't bring Ling Jing today, she was afraid that Xiang Kaiping could talk with Ling Jing here for half an hour. Big sister, you are welcome. If it is too troublesome, I can handle it by myself. It is not troublesome, not troublesome. She glanced at Su Peision. Peision? Su Peision only felt that the back of her teeth began to hurt, and she glared at Ling Jing with hatred. However, it didn't have any effect. Instead, Ling Jing moved closer to Xiang Kaiping. Words of gratitude came out of her mouth, but her eyes were looking at Su Peision. If she was not mistaken, there was a trace of pride in the other party's eyes. This realization made Su Peision's face turn red. Damn Ling Jing, did he really think that she couldn't do anything to him like this? Or did he really think that she had to compromise because of him? Dream on. She would never compromise, and she would never forgive. An hour later, she looked at Ling Jing, who was sitting opposite her. He and Xiang Kaiping seemed to be having a good time talking. If people who didn't know the situation saw that scene, they might think that Ling Jing was Xiang Caiping's son. Big sister, I didn't expect you to be in Rong City's Northern Heaven District. So is my home. What a coincidence. Xiang Kaiping was really surprised. Which road is your home in Northern Heaven District? Ling Jing said a place name, and Xiang Caiping's eyes lit up. She couldn't help but turn her face to look at Su Peision. Peision, look, what a coincidence. Not only can we meet people from the same hometown, but we are also so close. Hee hee. Coincidence? Wasn't it a coincidence? She didn't know how much effort Ling Jing had put in for such a coincidence. He asked someone to follow her. She came to Japan, and he came to Japan. She came to Glazed Light Academy, and he came to Glazed Light Academy. She said she wanted to come to eat, and he followed. He was really free. Her too cold attitude made Xiang Kaiping a little embarrassed. Peision? It's okay. Xiang Kaiping was too simple. She believed whatever others said. The corners of Su Peision's mouth twitched. You guys talk. I'm going to the bathroom. Su Peision got up and left. Before she left, she glanced at Ling Jing coldly. That gaze was angry and a little warning. In the bathroom outside, Su Peision tried very hard to calm herself down, but found it very difficult. Ling Jing's appearance greatly broke her expectations. She didn't expect him to be so thick-skinned, and she didn't expect him to appear in front of Xiang Kaiping so openly. She thought that after what happened before, the most important thing Ling Jing should do now was to disappear in front of her. Unexpectedly, not only did Ling Jing not disappear, but he also, Su Peision gritted her teeth. She had never been so angry. Ling Jing had calculated that she was worried about Xiang Kaiping, so he was so unscrupulous. Chapter 878. She turned on the faucet and washed her face with cold water. Su Peision didn't even care about ruining the makeup on her face. She needed to think of a way to drive Ling Jing far away from her sight. Su Peision hadn't thought of a way yet. When she returned to the room, she found that Ling Jing had said something to Xiang Kaiping, who was laughing her head off. She had known Xiang Kaiping for a few years, and it had been almost 2 years since she was released from prison. It was the first time she had seen Xiang Kaiping laugh so happily. Jing, I'll go and take a look next time I go back to Rong City. Okay. Ling Jing smiled brightly, but she looked at Su Peision from the corner of her eyes. Su Peision gritted her teeth and felt a little pain in her gums. Peision, you're back? Come here. Su Peision walked to the table and sat down. The shop was traditional Japanese style. The middle of the tatami was sunken. There was a table in the middle. As soon as she sat down, she heard Xiang Caiping's very happy voice. I just realized that our house is only separated by a road from Ling Jing's house. Really? It wasn't like Su Peijian hadn't been to Ling Jing's villa before. His house was in 2 different directions from their previous villa. Yes. Don't you think it's a coincidence? Indeed. Su Peijian was expressionless, but she looked at Ling Jing with an ambiguous gaze. It's really a coincidence. That's what I said. Xiang Kaiping looked like she had met an old friend in a foreign land. She looked at Su Peijian as if she wanted her approval very much. Auntie, when we go back, let's get together again. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing coldly. She had just called her big sister. Why did she call her auntie now? She didn't know how Ling Jing fooled Xiang Kaiping, but Xiang Kaiping didn't feel anything wrong at all. Okay. Jing, you're really good. Few young people are so patient nowadays. Not at all. Isn't this what I should do? What should I do? Su Peijian sat there and watched the 2 of them talking happily. Her face became more and more gloomy. If Ling Jing really thought that she would compromise because of this, it could only mean that he didn't understand her. She would not compromise. Ling Jing would not get what he wanted. For the rest of the time, Ling Jing was very attentive. His attentiveness was just right. Xiang Kaiping would not think that he was overly flattering, nor would she think that he was impolite. In the afternoon, they would go sightseeing at the scenic spots. Ling Jing walked right up to Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, are you thirsty? Have a drink. It's not sweet. It's delicious. Auntie, the scenery here is pretty good. Let me take a photo for you. Auntie, look, you should go with your daughter. Even if Su Peijian didn't want to, Xiang Kaiping signaled her to stand with her and take pictures with her. She didn't smile much, but it didn't affect Ling Jing's performance. In the evening, the 3 of them naturally ate together again. Before Su Peijian could pay the bill, Ling Jing had already run to pay the bill. How can I accept this? It's okay, Auntie. I was going to eat alone anyway. Now that you guys are here, I can eat a little better. I should be the one thanking you. I'm really sorry. When we get back to Rome City, I'll treat you to dinner. Xiang Caiping's words made Ling Jing's eyes light up. Really? Then I won't stand on ceremony. Auntie, why don't I treat you here and you can treat me when we get back home? That's fine. Xiang Kaiping thought about it and said enthusiastically, my cooking skills are average, but I can make some snacks. When we get back to Rome City, you can come to my house for dinner. Okay. Thank you, Auntie. You're so nice. I believe that you're modest. Your cooking skills must be very good. Ling Jing flattered her without hesitation. Just look at me, and I know that you're someone who knows how to live. You're really good with words. Sure enough, Xiang Kaiping was overjoyed by Ling Jing's flattery. When Su Peijian and Ling Jing planned to return to the hotel, Xiang Kaiping was surprised to find that Ling Jing was in the same hotel as them. Ah. This is really fate. She turned to look at Su Peijian, but she didn't realize that such a coincidence was not fate at all, but man-made. Peijian, look, Jing is in the same hotel as us. Heh. Yes, what a coincidence. Su Peijian said the word coincidence through gritted teeth. Yes, what a coincidence. Ling Jing looked calm. I saw the introduction saying that this hotel is good. I didn't expect it. It's really good. It's very good. The environment here is very good and clean. The transportation is convenient, and it's close to where we're going. Xiang Kaiping had been listening to Japanese for the past few days and couldn't understand a word. She was overjoyed to meet someone who could speak Chinese. Su Peijian stood by the wall of the elevator and didn't want to say anything. Anyway, when she returned to her room, she planned to book a ticket back to China tomorrow morning. Or go somewhere else. As soon as she had this idea, Ling Jing looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, Auntie, did you go to Qingshui Temple yesterday? Did you go to Tianlong Temple? All of them? I can't remember the name. Peijian took me there. Then where are you going tomorrow, Auntie? Tomorrow? I don't know. Xiang Kaiping turned to look at Su Peijian. Peijian, where are we going tomorrow? Tomorrow. Meeting Xiang Caiping's sparkling eyes, she couldn't say those words. She twitched the corner of her mouth and said, let's talk about tomorrow. Didn't you say we're going tomorrow, Nara? Su Peijian pursed her lips into a straight line. I said we're going to the hot spring in Nara tomorrow. Yes, we're going to the hot spring in Nara tomorrow. Xiang Kaiping repeated. There was a hint of joy in Ling Jing's eyes. Nara? Nara is good. I read the guide before and it said that the scenery there is also very good. I don't have a fixed destination. Why don't we go together? Okay. Xiang Kaiping didn't object at all. That's good. We'll go together at the appointed time tomorrow. In that case, I won't stand on ceremony and accompany you. Ling Jing glanced at Su Peijian as she spoke. She stood there expressionlessly as if she didn't see her gaze. Back in the room, Ling Jing's room was right across from them. Xiang Kaiping said again that it was fate. Su Peijian opened the door and motioned for Xiang Kaiping to go in first. Mom, you go in and rest first. I have something to discuss with Mr. Ling. Meeting Xiang Caiping's confused gaze, she twitched the corners of her mouth and forced herself to show a smile. Aren't we going to play together tomorrow? Naturally, we have to discuss the route and so on. Don't you think so? Yes, we have to discuss it. Go ahead. I'll take a shower first. Okay. Su Peijian watched Xiang Kaiping enter the door. Then she turned to look at Ling Jing. He was also looking at her. He opened the door directly, took a step back, and gestured for her to enter. Su Peijian looked at him coldly and closed her eyes. She didn't want to fight in the corridor like this, so she chose to enter Ling Jing's room. As soon as she entered, Ling Jing closed the door. Her body was pressed against the door by him. She didn't move. His eyes were eager. He stared at her for a long time and finally lowered his head to kiss her. Su Peijian didn't even struggle. She just stared at him. Ling Jing's lips stopped less than a centimeter away from Su Peijian's lips. His breath was hot as he stared fixedly at her face. He didn't speak, and Su Peijian didn't speak either. Their eyes met, but the air was quiet. Ling Jing was unwilling to give up. He wanted to let go, but he couldn't. If he didn't let go, Su Peijian's attitude was obviously stubborn. He made up his mind, tilted his head, and kissed her lips. He was almost hissing. He was forceful, fierce, rough, and eager. Su Peijian's lips hurt, but she didn't even move. She just stared at him. Ling Jing was more and more unwilling. He just bit her lips lightly and didn't let go. Their lips met, and they were glued together. Su Peijian didn't even bother to push him. He was annoyed and used more force. Just a kiss wasn't enough for him. He raised his hand and clasped it around her waist. It was very cold in the capital. She was wearing a slightly thick woolen coat. Ling Jing's hand reached into the coat, then followed the hem of her clothes, and was about to go higher. At this moment, Su Peijian put her hand behind her back and grabbed his hand. He stopped for a moment, and his forehead was still against hers. He just stared at her. Su Peijian let his breath brush across her face, and her eyebrows didn't move. Is it interesting? Ling Jing's hand began to exert force. This woman, now he really wanted to rub her into his body. At least this way, they could always be together. Is it interesting? Ling Jing? Yes. Ling Jing's evil nature rose. He raised his eyebrows and stroked her cheek with one hand. It's interesting. How can it be boring? I came out to play with the woman I like and my future mother-in-law. Just thinking about it makes me happy. Who are you calling mother-in-law? What do you think? Ling Jing caressed her face. Her skin was so good that he had the urge to bite it. Ling Jing, it's meaningless for you to do this. It's meaningless. Can't you just make it meaningful? Impossible. Su Peijian was expressionless. Ling Jing, it's impossible for me to be with you. Why is it impossible? Ling Jing was very unconvinced. Didn't you say it? Have you forgiven me? Forgiving you doesn't mean I want to be with you. Su Peijian waved his hand away. These are two different things. But in my opinion, these are the same thing. Ling Jing, there's no point in you tormenting these things. I said I won't be with you, so I won't be with you. Even if you try to please my mother, it's useless. Ling Jing tilted his head and stared at Su Peijian. Why do you have to use the word please? In my opinion, this is not pleasing, but I think your mother is a good person. Chapter 879. She pushed Ling Jing away slightly and turned to open the door, intending to leave. Ling Jing grabbed her by the waist and trapped her between herself and the door again. Even if you think I'm trying to please you, that's also sincere. Su Peijian, don't associate all of my actions with schemes and motives. Can't I? You don't have a purpose? Su Peijian smiled, her eyes very gloomy. If you don't have a purpose, what you should do now is to get back to the country, not appear here. Yes. I have a purpose. My purpose is just to start over with you. Can't I do that? No. Su Peijian shook her head, her expression cold. I don't want to start over with you. Because we never started at all. Am I wrong? Su Peijian raised her eyebrows, her expression slightly cold. The two of us were wrong from the beginning. You were calculating, I was ignorant. Since the beginning was wrong. How can we start? Ling Jing was angry, but he couldn't refute. Seeing Su Peijian reach out to open the door, he still didn't give up. Is it so important how we started? Grabbing her hand, his eyes were full of unwillingness. Even if the beginning isn't good, we can make the ending better, right? It's not important to you, but it's very important to me. She broke free, opened the door, and left. The moment she stood at the door and closed it, she stopped. Ling Jing, for you, you're used to being high and mighty. You think some things are natural, but I want to tell you. Things in this world are not what you want. The door opened and closed. Su Peijian went to her room without looking back. When she entered the door, Xiang Kaiping had just cleaned up and was about to take a shower. How is it? Have you said it? Yes. Su Peijian squeezed out a smile. Xiang Kaiping was not Li Qianxue. She couldn't confuse the two people. Let's go to Nara tomorrow. The hot springs there are not bad, and there are a few good scenery. Okay. Xiang Kaiping was very happy. It's good to be with your daughter. The strong sense of pride in her words made Su Peijian swallow the words she wanted to say to return to China. Mom, go take a shower. I'm tired after playing all day. Rest early. All right. Xiang Kaiping went to the bathroom, and Su Peijian sat on the sofa in the room, looking out the window at the darkening sky. Although she had made it very clear today, Ling Jing would definitely follow her tomorrow. She didn't want Xiang Kaiping to find out, and she didn't want Ling Jing to feel proud. But what should he do now? When Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping woke up and went to the hotel restaurant for breakfast, they found that Ling Jing was there too. Jing. You're early. Xiang Kaiping greeted her warmly. Ling Jing had been rejected by Su Peijian yesterday, but there was no change in her expression at all. Auntie, you're early too. Xiang Kaiping wanted to sit down, but Ling Jing pulled out a chair for her. When Su Peijian was about to sit down, he walked behind her and pulled out a chair for her. Su Peijian just stood there and didn't rush to sit down. Instead, she looked at him coldly. Her attitude was so direct that even Xiang Kaiping could tell that something was wrong. Peijian? Su Peijian smiled and said, "Nothing, Mom. I just feel very embarrassed." "Yes. Jing is too polite." Xiang Kaiping smiled and was obviously very satisfied with Ling Jing. "You make me feel embarrassed." "How can that be?" Ling Jing smiled and walked to the seat opposite them. One of the 3 joys in life is to meet an old friend in a foreign country. To be able to meet a Chinese in a foreign country, and a fellow countryman at that, this must be a great fate. "Yes, yes." Xiang Kaiping nodded in agreement. Su Peijian didn't want to talk anymore. She felt that if things continued like this, when Xiang Kaiping returned to Rome City, Ling Jing would probably become her other son. Ling Jing didn't seem to be affected by Su Peijian's cold face at all. After dinner, she waited politely for Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping to pack up. They were going to Nara next. When Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping packed their luggage and went downstairs, they found that Ling Jing had already arranged a car. "Peijian said yesterday, so I arranged the car." Ling Jing sat in the passenger seat and turned to look at Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, you can sleep for a while. It will take some time to go to Nara. You can rest in the car." "Okay." Jing, you're so careful." Su Peijian twitched the corner of her mouth and looked out of the car window. She didn't want to answer. She didn't say it casually when she said she was going to Nara yesterday. She had already arranged it. Now she was just going 2 days ahead of schedule. However, when they arrived in Nara, she found that Ling Jing had other arrangements. She took them directly to a hot spring hotel. The environment of the hot spring hotel was very good, better than the one Su Peijian had booked. Su Peijian wanted to refuse. But yesterday, she told Xiang Kaiping that she had arranged it with Ling Jing. She had no choice but to stay here. After lunch and resting for a while, Xiang Kaiping was in a good mood and said that she wanted to go to the hot spring. There were only 7 rooms here, all of which had to be booked in advance. The hot spring was brought indoors. The small pool was steaming hot. Su Peijian's face was a little red from the steam, but it was because she was angry. She glanced at Ling Jing, who was planning to soak in the hot spring with them. While Xiang Kaiping was changing clothes, she walked up to him and stood in front of him. "Ling Jing, there is a limit to my patience." "What?" "Either you leave now, or I'll tell my mother directly what you've done." Looking at Ling Jing's somewhat stunned face, Su Peijian moved her body slightly closer to him. Her voice was very soft. "Ling Jing, my mother only recognized me halfway. She's very protective of me. Do you think she'll beat you up with a broom if she finds out what you've said and done?" "Definitely." She knew, and so did Ling Jing. Ling Jing gritted his teeth and looked angry. "Su Peijian, do you have to be like this?" "Yes. I have to be like this." Su Peijian really didn't want to see Ling Jing. "I've already tried my best to control myself by tolerating you until now. If you continue to be like this, I can't guarantee what I'll say or do. By the way, I forgot to tell you that the one who hates to hear the words prisoner through labor the most is not me. It's my mother." Ling Jing's expression suddenly changed. He took a step back and looked at Su Peijian. "Do you have to be so ruthless?" "I learned absolute from you as well," Yi Zichen said. Ling Jing's hands hanging by his side clenched into fists. He stared at Su Peijian's face and finally nodded heavily. "Good, very good. You're ruthless enough. However, I don't have to follow you in, but I won't leave just like this." "You can try." Su Peijian straightened her back, her eyes unwavering. "Can I be more ruthless? After all, when it comes to ruthlessness, I can't compare to you." Again, the ruthlessness she had now was all learned from him. When Xiang Kaiping came out again, she didn't see Ling Jing again. She was still a little confused. Su Peijian stepped forward, hooked her hand, and led her to the room. "Mom, we're both women. He's a man. It's not convenient. Let's go." "That's true." Xiang Kaiping didn't think much and followed Su Peijian to the hot spring. Su Peijian's lips curled up. "Ling Jing, do you think you can make me give in by pleasing my mother?" Naive. Su Peijian didn't take a step back. Ling Jing had some concerns. The rest of the journey was the same. No matter how cold Su Peijian was, Ling Jing followed her. The only difference was that he finally knew when to stop. He didn't go further or do anything more to her. Su Peijian actually knew very well that with Ling Jing's unscrupulous personality, the reason why he didn't go further to harass her was because of his feelings for her. If he really didn't care and was selfish to the end, it seemed that she couldn't do anything to him. Su Peijian knew, and so did Ling Jing. However, they couldn't go further in the current situation. The two of them were in a stalemate, waiting to see who would give up first. Su Peijian and Xiang Kaiping spent New Year's Day in Hokkaido. However, Xiang Kaiping was old and couldn't stay up late. After playing during the day, she went to bed very early. At 11:30 p.m., Su Peijian's phone rang. She was afraid to wake Xiang Kaiping up, so she quickly turned the phone to silent mode. The message was from Ling Jing. There were only 2 words on it. "Come out. Crazy. Who cares about you?" Su Peijian put the phone aside without thinking. The phone vibrated twice, and another message came. "Come out, or I'll knock on the door and wake Auntie up. Crazy." Su Peijian gritted her teeth. She didn't want to talk to Ling Jing at all, but she was afraid that he would do it for real. "If you don't come out, I'll knock on the door right now. Do you believe me?" Su Peijian held the phone, wishing she could turn it into a hammer and hit Ling Jing. In the end, she didn't. Instead, she quietly got up and left the room. Outside, Ling Jing was already waiting. He looked at her and reached out his hand to her. "Let's go." Su Peijian stood there motionlessly. The lights above the hotel corridor shone on Ling Jing's face. It made his facial features look a little gentle. However, she knew that it was just a facade. All the gentleness and kindness of this man was just a facade. When he was ruthless, no one could compare to him. "Ling Jing, what do you want?" "I want to take you somewhere." "Are you crazy? Do you know what time it is?" "I know." Ling Jing nodded, not affected by her cold eyes at all. 11:45. "Let's go." He liked to be crazy. Su Peijian didn't plan to go with him. She turned around and took the key card to open the door. Ling Jing grabbed her hand and brought her to the other end of the corridor. "Ling Jing, you can shout louder and wake all the guests up." Su Peijian really wanted to, but she wasn't as shameless as Ling Jing. She couldn't do it. Not to mention that Xiang Kaiping was still sleeping inside. Ling Jing completely understood her scruples. He buckled her waist and said, "Maybe if you shout louder and wake Auntie up, she will know our relationship." Chapter 880. Su Peijian thought that Ling Jing was going to take her to his room, but that was not the case. The hotel they were staying in now had a very large courtyard behind it. The courtyard was well decorated. When they went down to the first floor, a staff member on duty came over and asked if they needed help. After Ling Jing refused, he took Su Peijian directly to the back door of the hotel. Standing at the entrance of the courtyard, Su Peijian didn't know what Ling Jing wanted to do. But no matter what he wanted to do, she refused to go out. She tightened her coat. It was very cold here at night. But soon she was not cold anymore. Ling Jing hugged her. He was very tall, and she was tightly wrapped in his arms. She couldn't break free and could only let him hug her. The cold wind outside that blew on his body was blocked by him. But Su Peijian didn't appreciate it. There were rattan chairs for guests to rest on next to the courtyard. Before Su Peijian could struggle, Ling Jing had already taken Su Peijian to sit on the rattan chair. Su Peijian almost wanted to get up as soon as she touched the chair, but Ling Jing pressed her down again. "Stay with me for 20 minutes. 20 minutes will be enough." "I refuse. You can choose to sit here voluntarily, or you can choose to be forced to sit here." Ling Jing held her waist and played a rascal. "But the result will be the same." "Ling Jing, I really didn't know that you could be so shameless. I will take this as a compliment." No matter what she said, Ling Jing didn't let go. Su Peijian glanced at him and took a long breath. "Okay. I won't leave. 20 minutes, right? I'll wait." Ling Jing's hand was still on her waist. She almost couldn't control the expression on her face. "Ling Jing, I already promised you that I won't leave. What else do you want?" "I know." As Ling Jing spoke, he hugged her and pressed his chin against her neck. "But, I haven't hugged you for a long time." Su Peijian's body was stiff, but she didn't move at all. "Ling Jing, let go. Just for a while. Just for a while." Ling Jing wrapped his arms around her waist and hugged her tightly. "It's so cold. Don't you think it will be warmer if we hug each other? It's also warm when I sleep in the hotel room. But I think your body is warmer." Su Peijian resisted the urge to lose her temper and was about to push Ling Jing away when she heard his voice. 5 minutes left. "What? New Year." Ling Jing stepped back a little and took her into his arms. "It will be a new year in 5 minutes." Su Peijian was stunned. She didn't expect Ling Jing to find her for this purpose. "However, so? You won't let me sleep just because it's almost New Year's Eve?" "Yes." Ling Jing nodded. "Last year, during the New Year's Eve, you abandoned me and ran away. Make up for it this year." Su Peijian didn't say anything. She had just brought him back to Rhone Garden during the New Year's Eve. She thought he was just a hooligan, so naturally, she wouldn't pay much attention to him. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have picked him up in the first place. As if knowing what she was thinking, Ling Jing placed her chin on the top of her head and gently rubbed it. "Su Peijian, I'm very happy that you were the one who picked me up last year." "Is that so? But I regret not letting you fend for yourself in that alley." She said it quite bluntly. Ling Jing wasn't angry. "I heard that if two people kiss during the New Year's Eve, they can be together for the rest of their lives." Ling Jing's words made Su Peijian's eyes widen. It was too late to escape. Someone was counting down in the distance. When the last 0 was counted, Ling Jing kissed her lips. At the same time, countless fireworks bloomed in the sky. Su Peijian was stunned for a moment. At that moment, Ling Jing deepened the kiss. It was extremely gentle and extremely lingering. He never let Su Peijian move away from his arms, nor did he let go of her at all. In the sky full of fireworks, Ling Jing ended the kiss. He looked up at the sky and then looked at Su Peijian. "Happy New Year." Su Peijian didn't reply to him. She looked at the gorgeous sky, and she couldn't tell what she was feeling. She didn't speak, and Ling Jing didn't speak either. He just held her and quietly admired. Maybe it's a little cliché. But it's New Year's Eve. I can't think of anything better. Maybe you can tell me. I'll prepare whatever you like. Su Peijian didn't say anything. How would she know what she liked? She was in a state where she had no desires. She didn't care about anything, and she didn't care about anything. In fact, she found out a long time ago that she could never find the enthusiasm she used to have, and she couldn't go back to the past when she was ambitious. "Peijian?" Su Peijian didn't look at him. She watched another firework explode in the sky, bringing a brilliant scene. Her voice was very cold. "Whatever I like, it won't be you." There was a flash of sadness in Ling Jing's eyes. Su Peijian naturally didn't see it. But she could feel the low pressure coming from beside her. 20 minutes are up. I'm going back. She felt a tightness on her wrist, and her footsteps stopped there. Ling Jing pulled her body and looked at her with a somewhat fervent gaze. "Is your heart so hard?" The light of the fireworks shone on her body, casting a long shadow in front of her. Su Peijian didn't look back. She pulled her hand out bit by bit, and her voice was extremely cold. "Yes. My heart is so hard. It's useless for you to do anything, and you don't have to do anything anymore. Ling Jing. I'll say it again, no matter what you do or how you do it, I won't forgive you. I won't. I won't be with you. I won't. Don't do these useless things." Su Peijian tightened her coat and left without looking back. The fireworks were still going on, but Ling Jing was no longer in the mood to enjoy it. He softened his body and collapsed on the rattan chair, looking very depressed. After New Year's Day, Ling Jing didn't appear again. Su Peijian thought that her words had worked. Faced with Xiang Caiping's question, she only said that Ling Jing had urgent matters to deal with back home and left first. Xiang Caiping was disappointed for a long time. She looked at Su Peijian from time to time. In fact, her thoughts were too shallow, and it was very obvious. How could Xiang Caiping not see that Ling Jing had been too attentive recently? She knew that he was interested in her daughter, so she wanted to interact more and observe him. Maybe they could become a good couple. Even though she knew that Su Peijian didn't care about it, she thought that it was always good to have more opportunities. Now, her daughter's attitude was so cold. And Ling Jing had left again. Those words were not good to say, so she could only swallow them. However, after the trip, she looked at Su Peijian several times and wanted to say something, but stopped herself. Su Peijian completely pretended not to see it. Until the two of them returned to Rome City. After returning, because the new year was coming soon, Xiang Caiping began to busy herself again. She had to prepare for the new year. After a while, she finally stopped talking about Ling Jing. Occasionally, she would sigh with the nanny at home that the two of them were not destined to be together. Su Peijian occasionally heard it, but pretended not to hear it. This year's new year came earlier than usual. The new year was at the end of January. Su Peijian was very busy at the end of the year. She was busy last year, and this year, because she took over Su Qinghui's company, she was even busier. Not to mention that Tang Mohan had previously said that there was a project in Australia that they could work on together. She was busy all day long. Xiang Caiping said that she had lost weight, but she didn't feel it herself. The few times she saw Lin Feixing, they talked about some business, but they didn't go any further. Once in a while, her car broke down. After going to Tang Mohan's company to discuss the cooperation, he casually asked her about it, then out of politeness, he sent her home. This caused Xiang Caiping to have a lot of misunderstandings. Hua Jinyao's childhood friend naturally couldn't be any worse. Tang Mohan looked like a successful person at first glance. Xiang Caiping asked again, and when she heard that it was just a cooperation, the happiness on her face faded again. But then she began to talk about Ling Jing. She said that he promised to go back to Rome City to look for her, but he never came. Su Peijian pretended not to hear it. She couldn't tell how she felt. She rejected Ling Jing and didn't let him appear again, but he didn't appear again. It turned out that his persistence was just that. After thinking it through, there was no need to care about some things. Life was like this. She should have seen through it a long time ago. Was it really true that someone couldn't live without someone? Su Peijian told herself to let go of this matter and not take it to heart. In the future, what happened to Ling Jing was none of her business. After the annual party, it was the new year. This year, she still had to spend the new year with Xiang Caiping. However, on the day before New Year's Eve, she went to see Su Qinghui. Because Su Qingsang and Su Peijian were both here, Su Qinghui bought a property here. Su Yusen was also on winter vacation, and old Master Li also came over. Su Qinghui knew that Su Peijian was going to spend New Year's Eve with Xiang Caiping, so they had a reunion dinner a day in advance. In addition to Old Master Li Qianxue, Su Qinghui, and Su Yusen, there were also Su Qingsang's family of 4. The 2 children were 2 years old. They were at the age of cuteness. They were learning to speak and looked very cute. Su Peijian had prepared early and gave each of the 2 children a big red envelope. She didn't care about the amount of money, as long as it was the thought. In the end, Old Master Li and Li Qianxue gave her red envelopes instead. They are not married, so they are considered children, Li Qianxue said. Looking at the few red envelopes in her hand, Su Peijian's eyes were a little hot. In fact, this was very good. She had both sides of the family, both sides of the care and love. She had family, career, love, and so on. It really didn't matter. New Year's Eve. This was a day for family reunion. However, for Ling Jing, it didn't matter whether it was a reunion or not. Every New Year's Eve was the same. Every year, it was the same people, the same things. Back and forth, the trivial things were tossed around again and again, wishing that they could be tossed around from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. He sat in the extremely luxurious living room of the Ling family, watching the eldest, second, third, and fourth children surrounding the old man, trying their best to flatter him. He felt disgusted. It wasn't just disgusting. It was also boring. It was the same show every year, and he was tired of watching it. Chapter 881. Ever since he was young, Lu Xiyun had always been worried about this son of hers. This was her only child, and to her, this child was the most important to her. But she didn't know when it started, but Ling Jing wasn't close to her, let alone Ling Xian. It was good enough that the father and son didn't turn against each other. Ling Jing didn't want to take over the business of the Ling family, but the more he didn't want it, the more the old master liked it. Ling Jing made a fuss last time, and Ling Xian gave him more work. This made his face very ugly. It was the new year, but he sat there like he was asking for a debt. Lu Xiyun called him a few times, but he didn't hear her. Ling Xian was angry. What's with your attitude? It's the new year. Who are you putting on that face for? Ling Jing finally came back to her senses and looked in Ling Xian's direction. He was looking at her too. Not only Ling Xian, but also his illegitimate children. There were 5 of them. There was even an extra judge for a mahjong table. Speaking of which, the situation of the Ling family could be considered complicated. It was the current head of the Ling family, Ling Xian, who was also Ling Jing's father. When he was young, he was very dissolute and playful. After all, the Ling family had a strong background. To be able to give birth to a child like Ling Jing, Ling Xian's looks were naturally not bad. Ling Xian was very dissolute. It was fine if he was dissolute. He didn't pay attention. When he was happy, he wouldn't think about taking precautions. So, before he got married, these illegitimate children were born one after another. In just a few years, Ling Xian gave birth to 5 children. The eldest was Ling Cheng, the second was Ling Hong, the third was Ling Yu, the fourth was Ling Han, and the 5th was Ling Fei. Not only were all 5 children boys, but the mothers of all the children thought that they had given birth to the children of the Ling family, so they had the chance to marry into the Ling family and become the matriarch of the family. However, even though Ling Xian was playing around, he was still very clear about the things that he had to understand. Although he liked all these women, he didn't plan to marry any of them. He was just playing around. Giving the children an identity and raising them in the Ling family was already a sign of his responsibility. With this premise, no matter how hard those women tried to enter the Ling family, none of them succeeded. And Ling Xian was also satisfied with this kind of life. Until she met Lu Xiyun. Who was Lu Xiyun? She was born into a wealthy family, but in the end, with her own hard work, she fought her way through the entertainment industry and finally became a double best actress. Ling Xian accidentally bumped into Lu Xiyun when he attended the award ceremony. It was shocking. They started a crazy pursuit. In Ling Xian's eyes, there was no woman he couldn't get. Unfortunately, Lu Xiyun did not fancy him at all. Not only did she not like him, but she also despised him. Especially after knowing that he had 4 illegitimate children before he got married, she did not like Ling Xian at all. But things in this world were really strange. The more Lu Xiyun disliked Ling Xian and disliked him, the more he liked Lu Xiyun, and the more he wanted Lu Xiyun to see him. As the head of the Ling family, Ling Xian had both money and status. Chasing after a woman was a piece of cake for him. He felt that it couldn't be any easier. However, he had never expected that he would end up kicking an iron plate at Lu Xiyun's hands. Lu Xiyun, as the newly crowned Best Actress, had a lot of contracts and film contracts in her hands. She did not lack money at all, and did not need to marry into a rich family to make her look good. Especially for a man like Ling Xian, who had an illegitimate child before he got married, she despised him even more. However, she didn't like Ling Xian, but Ling Xian wanted Lu Xiyun desperately. All kinds of pursuits, all kinds of tricks. All kinds of methods that a man could use to woo a woman had been used. But Lu Xiyun was unmoved. Later on, Ling Xian's rival found out that he liked Lu Xiyun. His rival kidnapped Lu Xiyun and made Ling Xian choose to give up the European air route and some of the businesses under his name. Lu Xiyun thought that she had always been cold to Ling Xian. Even if Ling Xian liked her, how could he give up his career for her? But she did not expect that Ling Xian would really do it. He signed the contract and transferred it. He did not even frown. If I, Ling Xian, can't even protect my own woman, what use do I have for money? Just like that, Ling Xian moved Lu Xiyun. She finally nodded and agreed to his pursuit. However, agreeing was one thing, and being together was another. Considering Ling Xian's previous bad record, Lu Xiyun was not willing to believe him, so she had not agreed to marry Ling Xian until now. They did not hold a wedding, nor did they go to get a certificate. But this did not affect Lu Xiyun's position in Ling Xian's heart. He had announced early on that Lu Xiyun was the Ling family's mistress. And Ling Jing, who was born by Lu Xiyun, was the only heir of the Ling family. This was also the reason why Ling Jing was born out of wedlock. But in the Ling family, he was an existence that no one dared to offend. Even so, because Lu Xiyun had never agreed to marry Ling Xian, Ling Jing's status was higher than his 5 brothers, but the other 5 were not convinced. They were all illegitimate children, so who was nobler than the other? They were not convinced by Ling Jing, especially after Ling Jing took over a lot of the family's business. They became more and more jealous. Ling Jing was protected by Ling Xian, and Lu Xiyun doted on him. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was favored by the heavens. But he had everything, but he was still not satisfied. He always acted as if he did not want it. How could he not make his 5 brothers angry? At this moment, when Ling Xian reprimanded, the eyes of the others followed and looked at Ling Jing. Although they did not show it on their faces, the gloating in the eyes of the 3rd and 4th brothers was still obvious. Ling Jing sat there and looked at the big family. There was no joy of the new year in his eyes, nor was there any joy of reunion. He only felt sick, very sick of the taste. Looking at the faces of his brothers, his hostility at this moment was unprecedentedly heavy. Who are you showing your face to? Am I showing my face? He raised his eyebrows, looking unrestrained and unrestrained. There was an obvious provocation in his evil eyes. What's wrong with me showing my face? Can't I show my face? Ling Jing, you, last year. Ling Jing suddenly stood up and pointed to his chest. I was stabbed here. Right here. He tore off his clothes, revealing his muscular chest and the obvious scar on his chest. Lu Xiyun's eyes widened. The fact that her son was injured had been hidden from her, and she had never known. Her lips trembled. She wanted to say something. But she could not say it. Ling Xian sat there. He looked at Ling Jing and naturally saw the scar. It was at the position of the chest. It was so long, if it was a little deeper. Ling Jing, who? Ling Jing laughed. He casually pulled his clothes back and glanced at his 5 brothers who seemed to be brothers. I know who did it, but I won't say it. But looking at you now, I feel very disgusted. You make me sick. The living room was quiet. The 5 brothers looked at each other, but no one spoke. Ling Xian also guessed some things, but he dared not believe it. Impossible. They were all his children. He had said it long ago. What's more, it was already a gift for him to bring these children back and raise them. Not to mention that although they did not get as much as Ling Jing, it was not bad either. Brothers and sisters? Brothers and sisters? Bah. Ling Jing spat and did not hide his emotions. Really? I am so disgusted with you. Ling Jing, it was the new year. Couldn't they do this on another day? Ling Xian wanted to stop him, but Ling Jing did not give him a chance. What brothers? They are just a group of brothers who can't wait for me to die. Lu Xiyun was the first to react. She felt sorry for her son, but today was the new year. Jing, don't say it. Why don't you let me say it? I want to say it. You like to fight, fight for it yourself. I don't like it. I will tell you now. I don't like this old man's family business at all. As he spoke, he turned to look at Ling Xian. His suppressed emotions reached its peak at this time. Old man, let me tell you. Do you think I will starve to death without your family business? Do you think I can't live if I don't want to be the young master of the Ling family? Let me tell you, it's impossible. Ling Xian's face was ugly. He covered his chest with one hand, obviously angered by Ling Jing. But Ling Jing did not care. You can give these assets to whoever you want. Don't force me to come back and pretend to be a brother. I am disgusted. The other 5 brothers all shrunk their heads and no one made a sound. Ling Xian stood up and slammed the table. Ling Jing, that's enough, right? I hereby announce that I don't want your property. I would rather go out and be a gigolo than inherit your family business. So, old man, you can put away your act. And you guys, stop acting in front of me in the future. I am disgusted. Ling Jing. Ling Xian was furious. Ling Jing did not want to stay. After returning from Japan, the Ling family had been fighting openly and secretly. He had encountered more than 1 backstabber and 2 car accidents. Because it was not safe around him, he did not even go to Supasian. But he had enough of such a life and was tired of it. He did not want the identity of the young master of the Ling family. He did not want the Ling family's property. He only wanted one thing now, and that was to return to the former Rome garden and stay with that woman. He only wanted her. He even missed the time when he was really a gigolo for her. The first half of his life was boring. Only during that period of time, he was really happy. He did not need to be the young master of the Ling family. He was just Ling Jing, a man. A man who was liked by Supasian, and also a man who liked Supasian. Jing, where are you going? Seeing that Ling Jing was about to turn around and leave, Lu Xiyun finally couldn't help but ask. No matter what happened in the past, his attitude now was really too willful. No matter what, today was the new year. To go where I want to go. Chapter 882. Stop. Ling Xian was furious. Ling Jing, do you know what day it is today? Do you know what you're doing? Ling Jing didn't look back. His face was full of an indifferent attitude. I have such an attitude. Don't be angry. Anyway, you have 5 sons. You don't need me. After saying this, his figure had already disappeared from the restaurant. Ling Xian stared at his back, fuming with rage. Lu Xiyun originally wanted to chase after Ling Jing, but in this way, she couldn't catch up. Don't be angry. You know this child. It's good that you're gone. Get lost. Ling Xian's temper flared up, don't come back if you dare. Lu Xiyun sighed in her heart. Such an aggressive personality, it was really exactly the same. Su Peijian learned how to make dumplings from Xiang Kaiping. However, her skills were really not that good. The dumplings she made were not as good as Xiang Caiping's. Not bad, your skills are better than last year. Xiang Kaiping did not forget to compliment her, which made her feel embarrassed. After all, although the dumpling she made wasn't cooked to the point of looking like dumpling wrappers, it was still really ugly. Xiang Caiping's handbag was really beautiful. It's fine. Anyway, it's just the two of us. We'll eat it into our stomachs. Who cares? That made sense. Su Peijian nodded. She didn't forget to watch Xiang Caiping's movements from time to time, trying to learn from her. She was willing to learn, and Xiang Kaiping was willing to teach. Like this, and then like this, and finally like this, see? Pinch it in the middle like this. Squeeze it a little tighter. That way, it will look better. All right. Got it. Su Peijian continued to wrap it up nicely. Xiang Kaiping talked about some of the new happenings in the neighborhood. There were also benefits to coming here. There were more people than before. There was also a square dancing place in front. In the past, Xiang Kaiping was not interested. Now that she had nothing to do, she went there every night. After dancing for a few days, his body seemed to be in better spirits. He was also young and energetic. After all, there were more people of the same age in the neighborhood than in the villa. Just as the mother and daughter were chatting happily, the doorbell rang. Su Peijian was stunned. Today was New Year's Eve. She did not think that anyone would come to visit. Although she had told Su Qinghui about moving, Su Qinghui didn't know the specific address. She did not want him to come. When he saw Xiang Kaiping, she was afraid that they would both feel awkward. Xiang Kaiping was stunned as well. It was the new year, and the housekeepers had gone home for the holidays. Who would come at this time? Go and see who it is. All right. When she saw Ling Jing standing outside the door, she didn't have time to think about anything else. She instinctively wanted to close the door. Ling Jing held the door with one hand and didn't let her close it. I was driven out by my family. Su Peijian was stunned by his words, but she had no intention of letting go. Get out. If you don't go out, I don't care if you get caught or not. Ling Jing was much stronger than Su Peijian. With him holding the door, Su Peijian couldn't close it at all. I've been kicked out of my home. I have nowhere to go. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian, thinking that if Su Peijian's heart softened, she would let her in. You've been kicked out of your home? Su Peijian sneered. Ling Jing, is this your new show? It's true. Ling Jing nodded heavily with a sincere face. I've really been kicked out. Peijian, I have nowhere to go now. If you don't take me in, I'll have to live on the streets. Who would believe that? Su Peijian was about to speak when Xiang Caiping's voice rang out. Peijian, who is it? Get out. Su Peijian wanted to kick her out, but how could she get past Ling Jing? He heard Xiang Caiping's voice and reacted quickly. Auntie, it's me. Jing. Jing. Xiang Kaiping suddenly perked up. She ran out of the dining room with dumplings in her hand. Jing, why are you here? Why are you here? There was flour in her hand, but the smile on Xiang Caiping's face was very bright. She didn't doubt it at all. She had only said the name of a neighborhood. Why did she find her way here? Auntie, sorry to disturb you. I said that I would come to visit when I come back. However, there are too many things. I'm only free today. Ling Jing's attitude was very sincere. When she spoke, she even bowed with an apologetic attitude. "Child, you don't have to be so polite. Come in." Ling Jing didn't look at Su Peijian at this moment. She only looked at Xiang Kaiping. The person who had wanted to squeeze in just now stood at the door and didn't move. "Auntie, I suddenly came here. I didn't prepare a gift." He did come directly to Su Peijian's after leaving the Ling family. He knew that Su Peijian had bought a duplex house here. He didn't look for Su Peijian before, but it didn't mean that he didn't pay attention to her situation. He also knew that Su Peijian moved in with Xiang Kaiping after the renovation was done. After leaving the Ling family, his mind was filled with the urge to see Su Peijian. There was nothing else in his mind. Under such circumstances, how could he think of bringing a gift today on New Year's Eve? "It's okay, it's okay. It's cold outside. Come in quickly." Ling Jing stood at the door and seemed a little embarrassed. "Auntie, it's the new year. Is it too much of a disturbance?" "No, it's not. What are you talking about, child?" Xiang Kaiping gestured for him to come in. Ling Jing took a long stride and walked inside. When he passed by Su Peijian, he winked at her. Su Peijian's face was very stiff. She watched coldly as Ling Jing entered the house again, and she couldn't do anything about it. Today was New Year's Eve. She didn't want Xiang Kaiping to be unhappy. The result of her forbearance was to watch Ling Jing follow Xiang Kaiping into the house, to see him follow her to the dining room, and to see him sit down next to Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, are you making dumplings?" "Yes." "Do you want to eat?" Look at this question. She was asking him if he wanted to eat or not. Did she want Ling Jing to stay for New Year's Eve dinner? "Mom." Su Peijian couldn't stand it anymore. She looked at the time. It was 7:30 p.m. They just came to visit out of courtesy. They still have to go back for the reunion dinner. As she spoke, she glanced at Ling Jing. "Mr. Ling, we don't have much to entertain you here. It's better for you to go back and celebrate the new year with your family." As soon as she said this, Xiang Kaiping felt that it made sense. "Yes. Jing, don't you want to go home to spend the new year with your family?" Xiang Kaiping was very traditional. Naturally, she wanted to spend the New Year's Eve with her family. "Auntie." Ling Jing looked aggrieved. "I was kicked out by my father. I have nowhere to go now." "What?" Su Peijian tried hard to control her urge to roll her eyes. Xiang Kaiping, on the other hand, looked at Ling Jing nervously. "How did this happen?" It's New Year's Eve, your father. I made him unhappy." Ling Jing spread his hands. "He always forces me to do what he wants. I don't want to. We just had a fight, and he kicked me out." Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing expressionlessly. She watched him lie as if it were the truth. This man was already used to lying. As the young master of the Ling family, he got whatever he wanted. Why would he be kicked out? "Why did your father do this?" Xiang Kaiping looked at Ling Jing, her eyes full of heartache. "It's New Year's Eve. Why don't you apologize to your father?" "We'll see." Ling Jing shook his head. "He's angry now. Nothing I say will help. It's better for me to come out and lie low. Maybe when he calms down, he'll be willing to listen to my explanation." "That's true." Xiang Kaiping nodded, but soon, she became worried again. "But, it's New Year's Eve. If you don't go home, it's okay, Auntie. I'll find a hotel." "A hotel?" Xiang Kaiping's tone immediately raised Su Peijian's guard. However, before she could voice out her opinion, Xiang Kaiping had already spoken first. "Staying here is better than staying in a hotel. No matter what, it's better than staying in a hotel alone during the New Year's Eve. Won't it be inconvenient?" Joy flashed in Ling Jing's eyes. Unfortunately, only Su Peijian saw it. Xiang Kaiping didn't. Yes. Finally, Su-Peijan didn't want to hold back anymore. She said without hesitation, "It's very, very inconvenient. You should stay in a hotel later." Peijan. You. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su-Peijan in shock. How can you say that? Mom. Su-Peijan clenched her fists. We're the only two women in our family. It's really inconvenient to take in a man. The house is so big. Let Jing stay in the guest room. How is it inconvenient? Mom, it's decided. Xiang Kaiping looked at Ling Jing. It's okay, Peijan. She doesn't mean any harm. How can I let you stay in a hotel during the New Year's Eve? Thank you, Auntie. Ling Jing smiled brightly. Auntie, you're so nice. You're such a good person. Su-Peijan gritted her teeth. All the words she wanted to say were useless here. She could only watch Ling Jing enter the room without saying a word. Not only did she succeed in staying. You're such a sweet talker. I'll talk to you later. I need to finish making these dumplings. Auntie, let me help. You can? No, but I can learn. Ling Jing rolled up her sleeves. I'm a good learner. Don't worry, Auntie. Okay, good girl. Ling Jing ran to wash his hands, then quickly came back and began to learn how to make dumplings from Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Kaiping taught patiently. It was rare that Ling Jing was also very patient. While learning how to make dumplings from Xiang Kaiping, he didn't forget to sneak a few glances at her. His eyes were full of joy. In her eyes, it was pride and a provocation. Su-Peijan sat on the other side of the dining table. There was a nameless fire in her heart. She wanted to curse. That emotion came again. Before, it was toward Su Qingsang. Now, it was toward Ling Jing. It was as if he was Xiang Caiping's son, and she was just an outsider. Chapter 883. Peijan. Look, Jing is really amazing. It's his first time learning and he's done it so well. Xiang Kaiping taught Ling Jing a few times. She did not expect him to master it so quickly. He finished one very smoothly. Although his movements weren't fast, at least he wrapped it up well. Su-Peijan didn't say anything. The dumpling in her hand seemed to have become Ling Jing's. She squeezed it hard. Peijan. Xiang Kaiping happened to see Su-Peijan's movements. She also felt it. The dumplings that she had prepared were crushed just like that. Just like that, the stuffing inside was exposed and stained with oil from Su-Peijan's hand. Are you okay? I didn't think there was anything wrong with your dumplings. Why did you crush it out of the blue? Xiang Kaiping looked at her, and so did Ling Jing. The corners of Su-Peijan's mouth twitched, and her smile was a little stiff. I'm fine. I wasn't careful. Su-Peijan gave Ling Jing a cold look, stood up, and went to the kitchen to wash her hands. The cold water washed over her palms, calming her down a little. Forget it. Why should she bother with a bastard like Ling Jing? If he wanted to stay, he could stay. If he wanted to stay, he could stay. What he did would only make her hate him even more. After washing her hands, Su-Peijan was in no hurry to leave. She placed her hands on the counter and pondered seriously. How was he going to get Ling Jing out? She was absolutely unwilling to be in the same room with him. Shameless. Did he think that she would compromise just like that? It was ridiculous. After a few deep breaths, Su-Peijan finally calmed down. It was the new year, and she wanted Xiang Kaiping to be happy. If Ling Jing's presence could make Xiang Kaiping happy, then she would reluctantly let him stay. She would just treat it as a clown who could make Xiang Kaiping happy. Thinking of this, Su-Peijan felt much better. By the time she walked out of the kitchen, Su-Peijan had already composed herself. She sat down again as if nothing had happened and began to wrap the dumplings again. She pretended not to see Ling Jing's gaze on her. She answered Xiang Caiping's questions very seriously, but she did not look in Ling Jing's direction. The three of them worked very quickly, and the dumplings were soon ready. Xiang Caiping carried the dumplings to the kitchen. "Take a seat first, I'll cook the dumplings." "Auntie, do you need help?" Ling Jing once again stood up very attentively. His attitude was sincere and he behaved well. Xiang Caiping smiled like a flower, and the fine wrinkles on her face seemed to have lightened. "No need, no need. Cook a dumpling. What do I need your help with?" "Sit down for a while. Watch some TV. I'll be done in a minute." Su Peijian stood up, not intending to stay any longer. He got up and went to the living room to turn on the TV. She had no interest in the Spring Festival Gala or the kind of programs that would be full of joy during the Spring Festival. Using the remote control, he found a film. It was a very popular documentary this year. It was about delicious food. Su Peijian sat on the sofa and looked very serious. Until Ling Jing sat down beside her. When he sat down, she forced herself to ignore him. She wouldn't purposely move to the side to avoid him. That would make him seem important. She didn't want to give him the wrong impression. However, when Ling Jing put her hand on her thigh, Su Peijian couldn't bear it anymore. She raised her hand and hit the back of Ling Jing's hand hard. The back of Ling Jing's hand turned red from the slap. However, he refused to take his hand away. "You're so strong." He leaned close to her ear. "Why don't you do it here again?" He pointed to his face. There was an obvious provocation in his eyes. Su Peijian bit her lip and really raised her hand. Her hand fell in mid-air and was caught by Ling Jing. He looked at her, then looked in the direction of the kitchen. "You really hit her? Aren't you afraid that Auntie will see it when she comes out later? Her daughter was harassed by a pervert. What else can I do but hit her?" Su Peijian looked at him expressionlessly. "Maybe after I hit her, she will say that it was a good hit." This woman really made him hate and angry, annoy and love her at the same time. He stretched out his long arm and directly buckled her waist. He lowered his head and was about to kiss her. "Ling Jing, if you stop messing around, believe it or not, I will shed all pretense of cordiality and call the police now, saying that you trespassed on my house." "You won't." After saying that, Ling Jing moved his face closer. "Because you don't want your mother to be unhappy." As soon as he finished speaking, their lips touched. She could only see his enlarged face. Anger began to gather in his eyes. As soon as she raised her hand, it was held behind her back by him. The situation of her hands being restrained made her whole body arch in his direction. The movement made Ling Jing smile as if she was throwing herself into his arms. He couldn't help but deepen the kiss. The TV was still on, and the sounds of Xiang Caiping busying herself could be heard from the kitchen. At first, Su Peijian gritted her teeth and refused to let him go deeper, but this damn man was simply too much of a jerk. He pinched her waist. It didn't hurt, but it itched. She couldn't help but loosen. And in such a short time, his snake had successfully broken in. Taking a step back would mean taking a step back at every step. Su Peijian couldn't resist Ling Jing's kiss. For a long time, he didn't taste her lips again. He didn't kiss her like this again, or hold her like this. Ling Jing almost didn't want to let go. However, he knew what it meant to know when to stop and when to stop. He let go of her, raised his hand, and stroked her lips. His gaze was so deep, as if he could put her whole body in it. "Peijian," his voice was close to a sigh. It felt especially sexy when her name came out of his mouth like this. Su Peijian's heartbeat was a little out of order. She suddenly pushed him hard. She sat at an arm's length away from him. Whether she admitted it or not, Ling Jing's kissing skills were damn good. His voice was the same. Peision, Ling Jing called her again. Su Peision glared at him as if she had been electrocuted. She quickly got up and went in the direction of the kitchen without looking back. In the kitchen, the water had already been boiled. Xiang Kaiping was putting the dumplings into the pot. Mom, do you need help? Sure. Xiang Kaiping nodded. Set the bowls. Take out the cold dishes we bought earlier and serve them. I'll cook 2 more dishes later, and then we can eat. Because there were only 2 of them, Xiang Kaiping didn't intend to cook too much. But now that Ling Jing was here, she definitely had to add 2 more dishes. Okay. Dinner was not considered a sumptuous meal for someone like Ling Jing. The Ling family celebrated the new year like zishi eating. The table was filled with delicacies. But to Ling Jing, that table of dishes was not as good as the steaming dumplings in front of him. Come, try it. Xiang Kaiping personally served a bowl of dumplings to Ling Jing. Auntie's cooking is average. You're welcome. Thank you, Auntie. Taking the bowl of dumplings, Ling Jing's eyes were a little warm. There were 5 illegitimate children in the Ling family. Including him, there were 6. Lu Xiyun was very good to him, but later, the old man got into a car accident. After the accident and injury, his health became much worse. Therefore, Lu Xiyun focused most of her energy on the old man. He was well taken care of by the servants every day. But no matter how well the servants took care of him, they were not his parents. He couldn't even remember if he had ever eaten a bowl of rice served by Lu Xiyun. Had he ever eaten a dish served by Lu Xiyun with her chopsticks? Child, why aren't you eating? No. I'm eating now. Ling Jing looked up at Xiang Kaiping with sincere eyes. Auntie, you don't know. My mother has never served me rice. Auntie, you're so nice. Xiang Kaiping was a very emotional person. As soon as she heard this, she suddenly became excited. Child, why are you so pitiful? She liked watching TV series, especially those domestic ones that were sentimental. Ling Jing's words made her imagine countless things. Then she thought of Ling Jing being kicked out of the house by his father. All of a sudden, she imagined a pitiful life that his father didn't love and his mother didn't love. Eat more. Xiang Kaiping looked distressed. No wonder you're so thin. How pitiful. The corner of Su Peision's mouth twitched. If it weren't for her good upbringing. She really couldn't help but flip the table. Ling Jing was pitiful. Mom, don't be funny. He was not pitiful at all. He was the dignified young master of the Ling family. His family property was calculated by hundreds of millions. He had countless properties under his name, and he casually played with your daughter. Was he pitiful? Peision, you eat too. Thinking that Su Peision was unhappy that she only served Ling Jing, Xiang Kaiping quickly served Su Peision a bowl. Su Peision took the bowl and shot Ling Jing a glare without hesitation. Unexpectedly, Ling Jing's eyes seemed to be a little red, and it looked like she was really moved. The more he acted like this, the more Su Peision felt uncomfortable and disgusted. How could there be such a man? It was really infuriating. It was really too much to act like this in front of Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, it's so delicious. Ling Jing tasted a dumpling and praised Xiang Caiping's cooking. She praised Xiang Caiping's culinary skills with great approval. Auntie, your culinary skills are amazing. It was indeed not the cooking of a famous chef, but the dumplings tasted more like home. Eat more if you like it. Xiang Kaiping sat down and thought of what Ling Jing said just now. She took a pair of chopsticks and picked up a few dishes for him, putting them in the bowl in front of him. Eat more. What a pitiful child. Su Peision had a hard time holding back. She could only eat the dumplings in her bowl to vent her anger. She repeatedly reminded herself not to be angry, not to be angry. Ling Jing didn't deserve her anger on the new year. She didn't speak, but it didn't mean that Ling Jing wouldn't speak. She chatted with Xiang Kaiping about some of the customs of Rong City during the new year. Su Peijian had been in Rong City for 2 or 3 years, so she really didn't know much about the customs there. But Xiang Kaiping knew. The two of them seemed to have found a bosom friend, and they talked very passionately. Su Peijian once again became the background. No matter how she gave Ling Jing a sharp look, it was useless. After finishing the meal, Su Peijian wanted to chase Ling Jing away. Unexpectedly, Xiang Kaiping looked at her and said quite naturally, "Peijian, clean up the guest room. Jing can stay tonight." Chapter 884. Su Peijian stood there without moving. No matter how well-mannered she was, she couldn't take it anymore. He was a liar. After lying to her, he came to lie to her mother. He was full of lies and had never spoken a word of truth. What he said was false, and what he did was false. How could an insincere person stand here? Peijian? She stood still. Xiang Kaiping was confused. Go. Mom. She forced a smile. Su Peijian's voice was very calm. It's getting late. Maybe his family is waiting for him to go back. After all, it's the new year. It's fine after he throws a tantrum. After saying this, she turned to Ling Jing. We're family. There's no overnight feud. It's better for you to go back. My dad has a bad temper. He kicked me out. If I go back, he'll be even more arrogant. Ling Jing sounded like a child throwing a tantrum. I don't want to go back. Knowing that Su Peijian wanted to kick him out, he looked at Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, can you take me in for a day? Xiang Kaiping was very soft-hearted. She couldn't stand Ling Jing's look. She turned to Su Peijian and looked a little reproachful. You're too much. Jing already said he has nowhere to go, and you still want to kick him out. It's the new year. What's wrong with letting him stay for a day? Go and clean up the guest room. Mom, go. Su Peijian was helpless. She glared at Ling Jing, turned around, and went to the guest room without looking back. When Su Peijian first renovated the house, the guest room was just for decoration. Anyway, the house was big and there were many rooms. She kept 2 as backups. It didn't matter if there was a chance to change it in the future. The 2 guest rooms had never been occupied before. The bed inside was empty. Su Peijian took out the bed sheets and duvet and stood by the bed. She couldn't swallow the anger in her heart. But how could she solve the situation in front of her? After leaving the guest room, she saw Ling Jing watching the New Year's gala with Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijian had never watched this kind of show. However, she had been worried about Xiang Kaiping for the past 2 years, so she sat by the side and watched. Ha 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 ha. Xiang Kaiping had a low threshold for humor. She could enjoy watching any comedy or skit. Su Peijian sat on the other side of Xiang Kaiping. When she saw her, the smile in her eyes deepened. Peijian, you are here? Did you see that? So funny. The corners of Su Peijian's mouth twitched. She couldn't bring herself to smile. It's really funny. Ling Jing nodded. Su Peijian's worldview was ruined by him. This guy watches the Spring Festival Gala. Auntie, let me tell you, I never watched the Spring Festival Gala before. I didn't expect the Spring Festival Gala to be so interesting. It's true. It was indeed beautiful. You look better every year. Xiang Kaiping nodded as if she had found a confidant. Look at this stage. It's much more beautiful than what we've seen before. Yes. Su Peijian sat there and once again felt like an outsider. She stood up and said, Mom, I'm going to take a shower. All right. Go ahead. Xiang Kaiping nodded. I'll watch for a while longer. Su Peijian went upstairs and glanced at Ling Jing. He didn't look in her direction. Her room was upstairs. She had connected the two upstairs rooms to make one large room. Su Peijian went into the bathroom impatiently. When she came out again, she had calmed down. Forget it. She would watch it later. After New Year's Eve, she would take Xiang Kaiping out to play tomorrow. It would be good if she wasn't at home. Let's see how Ling Jing would follow her. No, the last time they went to Japan, didn't Ling Jing follow them? That guy would follow them again. Since that was the case, what did it matter where she stayed now? Su Peijian took a shower and deliberately locked the door. She knew that Ling Jing was next door. She didn't want him to have a chance to sneak into her room in the middle of the night. Ling Jing wouldn't sneak in. He was just knocking on the door openly. Su Peijian heard the knock and knew it was Ling Jing. Considering that Xiang Kaiping was next door, she went to open the door. Can I come in? The guest room is downstairs. I have something to say to you. If you're talking about starting over, you don't have to say it. Su Peijian was expressionless. I don't plan to start over with you. But I do. That's your business. Su Peijian didn't understand how her heart could be so hard, but she was just so hard and unmoved. Go, Ling Jing. It's useless for you to stay here. No matter how much you pester my mother, it's useless. I won't start over with you. I won't. I, Su Peijian, always do what I say. You know that. After saying this, she quickly closed the door and locked it. She moved quickly, and her heart beat even faster. She was even glad that Ling Jing wasn't as shameless as before. He didn't break in without any scruples. After returning to her room, she forced herself to calm down. Since she had made a decision, she wouldn't regret it. It wasn't her style. She spent a lot of effort to convince herself and finally went to sleep. But that night, she didn't sleep well. She tossed and turned on the bed, tossing and turning. It took her a long time to fall asleep, but after falling asleep, it was an endless dream. In the dream, it was Ling Jing's enlarged face. He said over and over again, "Let's start over. Let's start over again." His eyes were focused and affectionate. Su Peijian almost agreed. After Ling Jing came to her door again and again, she dreamed that she finally gave in. Okay, Ling Jing, let's start over. But the scene changed. Ling Jing suddenly looked at her with a smile. Did I fool you? Who wants to start over with you? Let me tell you, I won't fall for you. You're just a convict. Su Peijian woke up from the dream with joy. Her face was very pale. She rubbed her forehead and looked out of the window. The sky was getting brighter. Just like that, the day had passed. Today was the first day of the Lunar New Year. Xiang Kaiping was alone in Rong City and didn't have any relatives. But a few of her former subordinates still came to visit every year during the Lunar New Year. Those subordinates had become Su Peijian's subordinates, so she naturally had to be there. She got up in the morning and cleaned herself up, only to find that Ling Jing had already left. Su Peijian didn't find it strange. She didn't even ask Xiang Kaiping when Ling Jing left. Xiang Kaiping looked at her and wanted to say something several times. She didn't move at all. After entertaining the subordinates who came to visit, Su Peijian took some time to go to Su Qinghui's current residence in Rong City. She visited Su Qinghui and his wife and received 2 big red envelopes. Li Qianxue patted her hand, obviously very glad. Fortunately, you came today. We've already booked tickets to Australia tomorrow. Yeah. Su Yusen looked at Su Peijian. Sister, do you want to go together? No. Xiang Kaiping was still at home. She couldn't leave her alone to play. Su Qinghui's family was going on a trip, and she couldn't bring Xiang Kaiping with her. Next time, then. Li Qianxue knew her current situation and didn't force her. It was unlikely that she and Xiang Kaiping would get along well. She felt uncomfortable when she saw her. She could tolerate Su Peijian because she had raised Su Peijian, but she was not generous enough to accept Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijian didn't stay long at the Su mansion and went back soon. She didn't see Ling Jing come back and breathed a sigh of relief. Until night time, there were still people setting off fireworks outside the window. Looking at the brilliant fireworks, she thought of the time in Japan when Ling Jing took her outdoors and gave her a firework ceremony. But so what? No matter how brilliant the fireworks were, they would eventually return to peace. Just like between her and Ling Jing. Ling Jing's absence made things convenient for her. Su Qinghui and his family went out to play. She also booked tickets and went out with Xiang Kaiping. Although she was used to the cold weather in Rome City, she still liked the relatively warm weather in the south. She stayed with Xiang Kaiping in Hainan for a few days. This time, Ling Jing didn't come with them. She tried a relatively relaxed and warm vacation with Xiang Kaiping and her daughter. Ling Jing didn't appear again until they returned to Rome City. Su Peijian couldn't tell what she was feeling. She was the one who asked Ling Jing not to come again. But when he really didn't come, she felt a little awkward and a little sad. In the blink of an eye, 15 years had passed. Su Peijian began to get busy again. She went on a business trip, and when she came back, she began to get busy again because of the previous project with Tang Mohan's company. In the blink of an eye, the first month passed just like that. One day, when she came home from work and passed by the bakery that Ling Jing had opened when he lied to her, she found that the sign had been changed. She was stunned. Because Ling Jing had chosen this place as a place to lie to her, she didn't look at this shop every time she passed by. But she didn't expect that the shop would change its sign after a few days. The new sign was very popular. It was called Enchanting Baking Shop. It didn't sound as good as the previous English name. Strangely, she pulled over and got out of the car. She entered the Enchanting Baking Shop. The decoration and layout seemed to be completely different from the last time she was here. The staff in the same uniform were putting new products on the shelves. One of the cakes was very exquisite, with two very cute people on it. It was a man and a woman, and it was very small. She looked around and finally decided on this one. "Pack this cake for me," Su Peijian said. Unexpectedly, the staff behind the counter shook her head when she saw which one she was pointing at. "I'm sorry, this cake was made by our boss. It's not for sale." "Not for sale?" "Yes." The staff nodded. "This cake was made by our boss for his girlfriend, so it's not for sale." "Is that so?" Su Peijian nodded. Then she didn't want to buy anything. She was about to leave, but someone walked out of the kitchen of the shop. "Pack that cake for her." Su Peijian was stunned for a moment. That familiar voice made her think that there was something wrong with her ears. She turned around and found Ling Jing standing there. He was wearing a chef's hat and white overalls. He was also holding a tray in his hand, which was full of cakes. He handed the cake to the staff on the side, walked in front of Su Peijian, and fixed his eyes on her. "You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.